Good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday, April 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. and we're running just a little behind. We're sorry about that. City Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Rostick,
Present.
Commissioner Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Here.
Commissioner McGinn,
Here.
All right, thank you. Next up is public comment for any items that aren't on the agenda. If you'd like to come up and talk to us, we'd love what you'd have to hear. Is there any public comment? Please come up, sir.
John Hendricks, is this on? John Hendricks, 569 Normandy Road. I came to the meeting tonight because of something I saw that happened last week. Several years ago, we were doing the budget and we were going over our sanitation department. And we found that the residents wanted this white glove service that we've always had. And so we raised our rates, not a little bit, we raised our rates substantially. And we did that to keep the service. Now, last week, there was a truck that came by to pick up our garbage cans. We didn't have the crew walking behind the truck and emptying the garbage cans. A truck pulled up, just like the one they use in Treasure Island, with a driver. Now, right now, there were a couple of guys following the truck to put the garbage can to where these guys could pick it up, or where the truck could pick it up. My point is that this is not the service that our residents are paying for. If we're going to one man driving a truck and we're losing that first class white glove service, then cut the rates. Either take the rates back like they should be, because you're not going to have near the costs, or just get rid of the sanitation department altogether and contract it out. But to go and do what is being done now, I made a call because normally if you've got a palm frond laying down, they'll pick it up. I was emphatically told that they will not pick up anything that has to do with any yard debris until Wednesday. Well, people work and people put stuff out during the week other than just a Wednesday. So if you put stuff out there any other time, even a little something, even a palm frond, it's going to lay there till Wednesday. So what we're going to have is, rather than a clean city like we've been wanting, and we spent all this money to get everybody these nice garbage cans, we're going to have piles of trash laying all over the city until Wednesday. And so it's totally different from the first class service we've had. I think you're going to end up with a big uproar about this, but if you're going to cut the service, just contract it out. It makes no sense compared to what we had. It's a lot easier on staff, I'm sure. They don't have to manage these people. They don't have to go out hiring people. I know there's a turnover, but we either have white glove service or we don't. Is it a management issue? Well, you've got to manage people. So that's why I say you might as well just contract it out. Thanks.
John, I have a question for you.
Sure.
How many people were on that truck?
There were three, as I remember. There were two walking
Okay.
and one driving the truck.
Was this that new side loader?
Yes.
Okay.
And so ultimately, once the guy learns how to drive the truck, there's just going to be one guy going around. I mean, they were literally positioning the garbage cans because I guess the guy's not used to it. But there was a palm frond that fell on the ground from somebody's garbage can. And I had two garbage cans out there. One of them had some leaves that where I had trimmed a little hedge, put it out there. They wouldn't empty it, but they did pick up that palm frond and throw it in my garbage can. I thought it was funny, really. I was like,
Yeah.
this is the darndest thing I've ever seen. So anyhow,
Mm.
I think y'all are really messing up going that route. That's why we increased the rates substantially a few years ago. So I think you really need to take a look at that. I hope you take this constructively. It's meant that way, but, it's not the service we've had. It's one of these things.
Do you know what
Residents-
year they raised the rates so we can go back and look at that off the top of your head?
I think Commissioner Kerr was on the commission when we did that.
Okay.
So probably, I'm guessing 3 years ago,
Probably two.
two.
Two to three.
Well, you know, us
Okay.
old guys, you know, our memory
Right.
is.
Look, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, John.
Is there any other public comment for items that are not on the agenda? Please come up. We'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, we'll go ahead and move on then. First up is city marina future usage.
I can start this one off. Actually, I'll start off the next two. They were items that I asked to have put on the workshop. So, at my request, Robin and Krabby met me over at the marina just to kind of get some feedback from, what, Krabby's there every day, what he sees and, what could be done to improve the marina. And I kind of put everything in a pretty good document here. I don't know if you had a chance to go through it. But there's some short-term improvements that I think just make sense right off the bat. And then there's some longer-term things that is going to take a little bit more discussion and maybe some design and trying to get some approval from the approving parties because the restrictions on the lots. So we can kind of break it down a little bit. One of the things I think we can talk about and vote on pretty quickly is just to increase the gasoline service because that is the major revenue driver for the marina. So they have two pumps right now, one's diesel and one's non-ethanol gas. And by far, the gas is at demand, high demand. So by adding another pump, which I'm sure Krabby would be happy to put some budgets together, adding another pump, we feel like we could increase the revenue at the marina substantially.
One quick question. Is that one pump with two nozzles or one pump, one nozzle?
Two nozzles on each pump.
Two nozzles on each pump. Okay.
And along with the pump, you need additional area for the boats to be able to get in on the side. And so it would be a half-width dock that would parallel the current fueling dock. So the actual location of the pump with the longer hoses, you might be able to have 4 boats sitting there waiting to be fueled. And hopefully with 4 hoses, 2 on each pump, you wouldn't have a whole lot of waiting and that would increase the revenue stream. That's the whole point.
One quick question. Is there data to back up the need to put an additional pump? Do we have evidence to support that there are boats waiting to get fuel?
That's more of a conversation with Krabby.
There definitely is. I mean, especially on weekends like this when we're busy, like last weekend, the weekend before, King of the Beach, this Friday coming up, there will be a wait. And that's just part of how it is right now with what we have. We go as fast as we can. We're pretty efficient, but more hoses means we can pump through more gas. So I've actually went ahead and out to go get a quote to just see what the cost of a new pump would be. And then to see if the existing piping and sump pump that we have from our tank running to the pumps would be sufficient. They said, yes, you can always increase the horsepower of the sump pump to provide more fuel, to the pumps themselves if it happens to slow down any of the pumps. So it's all doable without having to run any new plumbing to say from the main tank underground to the pumps. But yeah, there's on a nice Saturday, there's always a wait pretty much between, I'd say 10 o'clock till about 3:30, 4 o'clock when it kind of winds down a little bit.
What is your underground storage capacity for gasoline and diesel right now in your tanks?
If they're completely full, it's 9,500 gallons of both. So each.
Okay,
So 95 and 95.
okay.
Based on our discussions that day, it seemed like this was a very low risk, quick return on investment proposition. Now, of course, we don't have the exact numbers, and projecting revenue is hard to do, but just by, I mean, Krabby's been living there for several years.
Yeah,
He would know.
we're very big on customer service. On weekends, we always have somebody out kind of just, managing the dock to say, where they're helping tie boats up, keeping people in line, making sure that there's nobody jumping ahead of anybody else. So we always keep that, just to keep customer service at a high, to make sure that, we're not giving people super long waits. But I'm going to tell you that a lot of these boats now, have 4 to 600 gallon tanks, and it's not uncommon for these boats to be there over an hour getting fuel. If they're getting 300-400 gallons, they could be sitting there an hour on one hose. So that's when we start experiencing our backups. So an additional 2 hoses would pretty much start to eliminate. I mean, how often are you going to get 4? It's a good problem to have if you get 4 boats in there at one time getting 300 gallons, but I don't see that. So it helps with the flow of moving the smaller vessels in and out that are getting maybe 20 gallons, 30 gallons, 40 gallons here and there. So I think it'll help with timing, give the customers an overall better experience there. And I don't think you can really lose, because you have an extra pump in case you have something go down. You have, a backup to that situation. So.
And I think your customer base is going to realize that, hey, there's less of a chance of a wait if you go to the city marina. So I think this is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. This is an easy one.
How much does the pump cost to get to purchase and install?
Well, we had about 4 years ago, we redid the 2 that we have. So this was 2 pumps that we replaced. Now all the piping, plumbing, electrical, everything was already there, and that was right about 30,000 for 2. So if I had to say to run there's electrical there, but then there's some compliance things that you have to run, like sensors and things like that would need to be run. So I wouldn't say it could be over 30,000, just with things that need to be done compliance wise, plus the cost of the items has gone up over the last 4 years. So.
And what size ID is the supply line supplying the pumps from tank to pump?
They're 2-inch.
Okay,
And then to give you an idea, the fuel hoses themselves are 3/4 inch. But that's, I don't think they told me that there shouldn't be a problem with pumping the supply to that. They see it a lot. That we may have to increase the sump, which is the main pump that's in the underground storage tanks that pumps to the gas pumps. And then those pumps have their own pumps that pump on each individual hose.
but the price that you're saying does not include that upgrading of that pump that's in the sump, though.
I'm supposed to get a price here this week. I asked them to try to rush it to me. They said, we want to give you an accurate price. So they're supposed to get it to me by the end of the week.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Krabby.
Welcome.
And so the next conversation was,
I think.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just going to reiterate what you had said about the customer service, increase in the service. I think it's a great idea. And also increasing the revenue. I think it's very important. I think it's a no-brainer, as you said.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner. The second part of it is, we were talking about having these 6-pack charter captains actually coming to the marina to pick up their guests for the day or for the afternoon. And we were told absolutely not. And the reason being is because of parking. I I think it would be an advantage to the city if the charter captains were coming there, getting their fuel, loading up and having their patrons come from wherever, from the Reddingtons or from Deer Beach or whatever, and going to the marina. So the solution would be, of course, more parking. How would that work as far as the return on investment? That would depend on what other services or that these customers could get. So looking at, I'd love to see a restaurant or other services that the families, when people are coming back on their boats, the families come meet them and have a few drinks or a meal while they're filleting the fish, or in the mornings catching breakfast before they go out, or if it's an afternoon charter, having lunch before you go out. Now that becomes a little problematic as far as what the uses for that area can be. There are certain parcels, I think there's 7 parcels at the marina. Some, we've been told you could do that. Others, not so much, without special permission. So we'd have to look at that and come up with a plan. So that's more of a long-term thing and more of a, we need to talk about it more. So, but as far as restaurant and meeting space, I think, it'd be a great place for Old Salts to meet and maybe give classes to our youth on fishing, or maybe having a area there where the youth could fish, where they're filleting the fish, they're cleaning the fish. That creates a great place to attract fish. I'm just throwing out some ideas. We can, I don't know if there's any discussion on that.
Nothing on this report strikes me as a negative. I see it on the surface. It's all looks like it's service oriented for the city, profitable. I'd like to see, the breakdown of costs, but otherwise on the surface, this I'm amenable to all of this.
I think the biggest issue is going to be parking. I mean, the majority of the lot is covered by rental spaces where boat and trailers are parked, and there's limited parking for boats and trailers that have launched. And then what's left over? Not much.
Well, you have the public works area. So if you put an elevated parking garage in that area, you could reserve the bottom at grade section for public works. That'd be one idea. I'm open to others, but to be able to have that parking area, let's call it a 3-story garage, two stories for parking above the public works area. That's one concept. Again, you're not going to get enough at grade parking as long as you have the dry dock storage in that area. Regarding the dry dock storage, I mean, one of the biggest comments that I get about the marina is that it's the first thing that you see when you come across the causeway. And it's not attractive. The old fence, I think, was chain link that was replaced with the solid vinyl fence, which is definitely an improvement. But still, it reminds me basically of a salvage yard. I don't know how else to put it. Now, people that are used to going in there, they understand that that's not. But why do we need a fence at all? Why do we need that for security? If you're going to have dry dock storage, why can't it be set up so that you can lock down your trailer and get rid of the fence? Make it more green space, make it you put shell down, make it more uniform as far as the slots, the spaces where the boats are going. I just think it can be cleaned up a bit. You have the above ground utilities there where the public works area is. There's no reason that needs to be above ground. We should be able to underground that few hundred feet of overhead power lines. I just think it can be cleaned up and make our city look better. As far as, so the security, if you're locking down the trailers, I'm sure there's lots of ways to do that. You have the security there and add security cameras. Put security cameras up on poles if that's the major concern. Just my thoughts. Again, I can stop there for comment.
Well, just to remind all of you, the building or the marina department, our city marina is its own business enterprise fund. So any expenses or anything would come directly out of that fund. There's nothing precluding general fund dollars, but typically it would come out of the revenues that the marina generates.
So it's similar to the building department, how
Correct,
it
yes.
operates.
Yes.
Understand.
Yeah, and Krabby, I don't have any of the, well, Krabby's been here, I think, the longest of any of the capital projects received general funding, or I don't know, Megan, if
I believe the store did, but it was paid back.
the Marina Fund
Yeah.
paid it back,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
So just to remind everybody that that's
Again, if we can show return on investment, I think the dollars can be worked out, whether it's a loan from the general fund to the marina. If you can, I would just like to see it more inviting. When I moved here full time, it was not, I didn't feel like it was inviting. You're going to go to the marina? I don't know. Am I allowed to drive in there? It's kind of the way I felt, and I'm sure others feel the same way. I'd like it to, if we could actually have services there, a restaurant or a meeting space, or hold fishing classes for the youth, or have the charter captains come in to pick up their guests for the day or for the afternoon. I think that would be a great thing. And again, we're attracting dollars from neighboring cities. So just my thoughts.
All right.
Well, that pretty much goes over the ideas. As far as the deed restrictions, I just
Can we
kind
hold
of,
just for a second?
Yeah.
Let's get public comment on this. Would anybody like to comment on the marina? Okay, continue on. I just want to make sure everybody gets heard. Everybody
Oh,
gets a
absolutely.
voice here.
absolutely.
Well, with I'll say something. The fence is up for security purposes, obviously, things like that. People don't steal boats. I mean, they still do, but now the big thing is electronics. So it's almost a fine line where you're walking with inviting and you don't want to be inviting at the wrong time of day. So on the new sign that we put up there now, which it isn't finished yet, they still got some work to do to the sides, but I did put up on there public welcome 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Maybe use the sign as a part of a tool to try to bring the public in and let them know it's open. But a lot of people that do come to visit there, they'll tell you, man, we didn't know it was back here. That's something that does happen. So now maybe this sign will help bring some people back. But usually once they find out, then word of mouth travels. It's actually a gorgeous view out back. We get a lot of people that just come there and have a couple beers that just passerbys, and we get a lot of people from out of town, a lot of snowbirds during that time of year that just come out there, and they're there almost every day religiously, having a beer or coffee or whatever. So there is a lot of activity besides just the people that have their slips inside the marina. But to be more inviting, I'm all for it.
I
All right.
think,
And Krabby did mention the new sign. It's the
Mhm.
digital sign that should be completed. That will have a lot more information and a little bit more inviting. I mean, but
Okay, we have public comment. Great, thank you.
It's actually just a question. On the new fuel dock, so first of all, Jason Delacruz owned two businesses here in town, one on Pelican and then one right there on 150th and then unload boats. We're a seafood company, so we unload boats all over the beach here. But on the new fuel dock, would that be to the east or to the west of the current fuel dock?
That would be to the west side,
That'd be to the west.
to the west
Yeah.
side. Yeah. It wouldn't be down that canal going back towards the old Save on Dean's Place. It wouldn't be that way.
That's what I was worried about.
It'd be on our submerged land to the west side of our
All right,
fuel dock.
thank you. That was my own.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming up.
And we do have, and one other thing, Mr. Kerr, we do have security cameras at the marina. There's 14 of them right now.
No, I understand the concern about the fence, but I just think the whole fence thing really is a detraction. I understand about the electronics, and that's a great point. If it were opened, it's one of the places where the sheriff's department could come through on a regular basis, and the cameras. I mean, cars get broken into as well.
Yeah. We have sheriffs drive through. Actually give a few of our night deputies actually have like garage door openers, so they didn't have to get out of their cars or their vehicles to punch in the code. They can just go ahead and use our garage door openers. So it makes it more convenient and inviting. And they love our bathrooms because they're very clean. So we get a lot of traffic in there from the sheriff, which is great. Loved it when they drive through it. If it just deters somebody, that's awesome. You
I
know,
mean, if someone's gonna want to come to steal electronics, there's no reason why they couldn't come by boat. They don't have to come off of the 150th.
I agree. If somebody's going to steal something, it's usually they're going to try to make it happen.
Right. So I understand the concern, but that's kind of where I'm coming from, unless someone can, I'm always open to change my mind, but right now that's kind of where I'm thinking.
Krabby, how much did we pay for the fence and when was it put in?
Okay,
Approximately.
the fence was about 10,000 altogether. And it was put in over a span of 2 years. I want to say 2020 to 2021.
Okay.
Because I would say it was definitely 2020 because the COVID thing happened. The guy couldn't get workers. So that's why we had to move on to another fence company because he got about halfway done and then he just called us and said, look, I lost all my guys. And so we had to wait months and months and months for him to finish it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I see the fence as a necessary evil. It's plain. How about if we find a way to dress it up? Now, I'm not talking about painting murals on it or anything, but I don't know, nautical themed attachments or something to make it more appealing? Just an idea.
I mean, you can do that. You can do what, like almost like a wrap kind of thing where you have
Well, I
maybe
don't
a
know.
compass rose or something like that, but not the whole fence,
Yeah.
maybe just
Part of it.
you know.
To draw people in to say, hey, oh, there's a marina behind this fence. Come on in.
Yeah.
Just
And then
an
we do
idea.
advertising through different, nautical
Yeah.
type magazines, things like that, marine magazines. So you could maybe gear something towards,
Yeah.
we have, our thing is like bring your boat to the beach because, a lot of people that are staying out here in the hotels and things in the area, they don't realize that there's some places convenient as we are right here on the beach where they could store their boat overnight, have a boat ramp to launch it at, have all these amenities able for them to use their boat and experience a good time in our area. That's really what we're about is the advancing recreational boating to everyone, not just, not just to say Madeira Beach, but everyone that comes to visit this area.
Any chance you're going to upgrade that ramp to make it less tricky where you launch the boat and then you can't get over to the floating dock?
I wouldn't say it's a beginner ramp, but it's once you get it dialed in, it's pretty easy. So a lot of people, you got to tell them which way to approach first
Yeah.
is the key. We have signs pointing you.
Oh,
hey,
yeah, you got to go in
come
one
this
way or you're all
Yeah.
cattywampus.
So, but the ramp works very well. I'll say that because we have never had a boat that we couldn't get out, even up to 42-foot boats. So the actual ramp itself is a well-built ramp and, serves a good purpose.
Yeah, it's just not for beginners.
No.
No, okay.
After attending the Great American Grunt Hunt several times, our community has a great time. Our kids have a great time. It's a fun time. The only thing is our downfall, just like Commissioner Kerr said, is our parking. You know, somehow we need to be able to get together and fix that problem. Maybe we can do that with the increased revenue that we can make with the fuel pumps. I'm all for what you're saying in here. It's a great idea. And the Great American Grunt Hunt, great job. It was a great time. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other public comment on this before we move on? We'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, Commissioner
Well-
Kerr, batter up.
Well, I'm going to end with one thing on that. We're
Okay.
going to be building a new hotel as a neighbor there. There's going to be foot traffic to the beach from that new hotel, I'm sure. They're going to walk right past the marina. I just think we just need to make it more attractive to people just walking in and checking it out. What,
Well, like tearing down that fence and putting a line of palm trees.
yeah, I mean, just more green space, shell area, clean up the public works area and make that possibly a place for a parking deck. So that the public works equipment is not exposed to the weather any longer, and it just cleans up the area. Underground, there's utilities. I just think if it's open and inviting, people will come in and if there's something to buy, if there's a restaurant or if there's, I'm sure it would be utilized just to be able to sit out maybe in an open area where, you have thatched roofs and just an open picnic area sort of thing. I think it would be great.
Absolutely. It's a great area. And like you said earlier, some people are afraid to go in there. They think it's an impound lot.
That's the way it looks to me. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
One last question for Krabby then. If we, down the road, in short order, can get that second pump approved, is there enough room on both sides of that dock to get boats in to fuel 3 and 4 at the same time? Or do we have to spend more money to gain that advantage?
Well, there would be enough room. As there is right now, boats pull up to the dock and they'll sit there and wait. And something else that I kind of looked into also was adding that additional piece of the fuel dock that we were talking about early on in the conversation. It would be 6 foot wide and basically go out it would leave 24 feet in between the docks, the 2 docks, when you space it where it's at, and it'd be 70 foot long. So you'd have additional tie up there also.
Okay, so then to answer the question, it would be an additional cost over and above the fuel pumps that we would have to modify, add to the dock.
You could add the docks there. I think the additional fuel pump would work with what we have. I think adding another fuel dock would actually help out with just the congestion of things also too. So the fuel pump itself, I think that can go right in, and the dock as it is, it'll help move things along. And anybody that's been there on a Saturday in the middle of the day is you're usually going to have to wait a little bit, unless you catch it lucky. That's what we tell people when they come in. They're like, "Oh man," and I'm like, "Hey, you got it lucky," because we had a line up, an hour ago. So the additional fuel pumps and the fuel flow, that'll help just with customer service, everything, getting people. They don't want to sit at the fuel dock for an hour waiting on fuel. They don't want to, but they got cold beer and everything inside. So we tell them, go on inside, grab your beer, look around, and a lot of the girls will get off the boat and use the bathrooms and stuff like that. And then we always get comments on how clean our bathrooms are and everything. So our bathrooms are actually an attractant out there on the water, believe it or not.
I can believe that. So then, staffing wise, you have enough staffing available at your facility currently to be able to do all of this?
Yes, right now we are top heavy on the weekends. So we do have, if somebody takes off, things like that, we cover weekends very heavily. So that's our busy times. That's 2/3 of our business is Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
All right, look, thank you for the great information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krabby.
Commissioner Kerr, next.
Second item was what I'm going to call is the homestead relief for property taxes. So in 2021, House Joint Resolution 1377 was successfully introduced through the Florida legislature and made it on the ballot. Now that's the statewide ballot. It was approved by a majority vote. However, it did not get the 60% needed to move forward. And what that resolution stated basically is if you raised your home, you mitigated for flood, that it would not impact your property taxes. You'd remain the same property taxes up to 110% of the air-conditioned square feet is the way it was written. So it soared through the legislature. I think it was unanimous on both sides. Now, I had heard rumors, whether they're true or not, that they were also looking at reducing the property tax maximum increase for homestead properties to reduce it from 3% to 2%. If that's true or if it's not true, to have that, again, property tax relief for homestead properties would go hand in hand with the 2021 House Joint Resolution 1377. So I met with our lobbyist, R.J. Meyer, and brought this up. And just on a personal basis, I wasn't speaking for the board, and I made that perfectly clear. But I did share that as a resident, I had sent an email to Senator DeSigley, and I had also sent an email to Linda Cheney, and I had talked to her very briefly at the legislative update that they had at the Cambria probably about a month ago. Combining two items on a single measure is a tough task. If they're considered two different items, it may not pass, it may not be able to pass legally. However, these both have to do with homestead property taxes and restricting an increase or limiting an increase. So I don't have a legal opinion on whether it could be done or couldn't be done. All I'm asking is that the board consider it, and if you would agree that as a board, that we will put together a letter stating basically, and you could wordsmith what I put together, but basically stating what I've stated, but coming from the city is something that we would like to have considered. So I don't know if the board even agrees with me, but I at least wanted to bring it up as a discussion item.
So, Commissioner Kerr, so based on your conversation that you had, what was, I didn't get a sense of his optimism or negativism about it. What was his, did he give you any kind of a sense of this, yeah, this could happen, or is?
He didn't know. He really had no, he really didn't know.
I mean, I think you talked about this our last meeting. I think it sounds good. But if there are legal issues, I question whether we should be suggesting it as a city.
Well, it wouldn't be legal.
I mean, it would be legal. I'm sorry. Would it be legal to pass those two combined as a combined bill?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's no way.
We
that
need to know. I think I'd
would-
need to know that.
I don't think we would know.
Oh, we
It was-
couldn't know till it goes out.
It would be something that the legislature would determine, but at least we could present it as something that, as favorable, that we see it as favorable.
Right.
Because let me back up. I attended the hurricane seminar over the past weekend, and it was brought to everyone's attention that if your house floods and it does enough damage that over 50%, it would be over 50% of the value of the structure to repair it, you have no choice. You have to meet FEMA standards. You have to mitigate. So I feel like so many of our residents are handcuffed. I mean, put yourself in a situation where you got a permit earlier in the year to do something on your property. And so now your 50% threshold is reduced, and then you get hit by a flood. So now your 50% is 30 or 40% or whatever. You're mandated to, you won't get a permit to repair your home because of FEMA standards. You need to raise your home.
And how can people afford
they
that?
need relief. I mean, if not, you're just having people sell because they can't, they've been flooded several times and they're done. So even if they can afford to raise their home, why should they get hit by higher property taxes? Because now they have a new home. So, the value, the property value remains the same, but now the structure value has gone up and your property taxes go up. So you're hit for, who knows, thousands of dollars more each year for as long as you live there. That doesn't seem right.
So what you're saying is you want the people to fix their property, but you don't want them to be taxed on the new assessable value.
Correct. Now
That's gonna be a tough sell.
that passed, that piece passed 2 years ago.
Past the legislature.
Passed the legislature.
But
It
not
did
the
not
voters.
pass the vote. My contention is it didn't pass statewide because it's not seen as an issue statewide. If you live in Orlando,
It doesn't apply.
it doesn't apply. So why should those rich people on the beach be given it's not even a reduction in your property value, because as soon as you sell it, it's
gonna be reassessed.
the county's gonna reassess it. So it's just pay me now or pay me later. Sooner or later, that property is gonna be reassessed. It's at best, it's just pushing it down the road.
You're kicking the can down the road now.
But by mitigating the homes and raising the homes, it's less pressure on EMS, less pressure on the city. It's going to be less homes that are flooded. And that's what we, as a city, we need to try to do. And I think this would be a great step in that direction if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible or not, but that's my contention.
I agree with that also. There's less people living in Madeira Beach now than there was in the past, say, 5 years. We need more full-time residents here. And any way we can do, as you propose, is a great idea. Thank you.
So it sounds like you're asking, our opinion, if we should go forward with crafting a letter that we would send to our lobbyists, that would be sent to legislation officially representing Madeira Beach, City of Madeira Beach's point of view or perspective on that. Am I getting it?
correct.
Okay, I'm in favor of that, obviously, after we look at the letter. Yeah.
I'm in favor of it too. I would like the document cleaned up to where it hammers it out, bullet point, what the issues are and our potential resolution of them. And then if we can get a consensus from the board to vote on it, from there, I'd be more than happy to take it to the Big C, and maybe we can get all the barrier islands on board.
That would be great.
Good work.
Do we have any citizen comment on this? We'd love to hear what you have to say. Please come up.
Chuck Dillon, 529 Lillian. There used to be, and I believe there still is, a FEMA program where they pay 75% of the rebuild. However, the cities have to be part of that organization. Madeira Beach used to, but they got stung on a few of the houses. And evidently it was several $100,000. And it can take 2 years to have your house rebuilt and go through the process and everything. But there is a program that FEMA has in place that each of the cities have to follow those guidelines. So there is something there. I mean, but it's just, as I recall, Linda was very well aware of it, and it's in the progress, it's in the process, but it's a matter of getting back into that program. And the tough part is the city winds up being the one holding the bag at the end of the thing. The resident has a whole new FEMA house, but ultimately, FEMA backs out of the different things in that. And that was my recollection from a few years ago.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Dillon makes some good points. You have to be flooded, I believe, 3 times in a certain period of time. And it has to be over a certain value of damages over that certain period of time, and then to qualify. And it's a long, drawn-out process. But regardless, I don't think I think this is another parallel path that, we can still have those discussions and still determine if that's something the city wants to get involved in. But to actually put together a letter from the city and bringing it to the Big C as well, and having each community provide a similar letter or the same letter, I'd be happy to help work on drafting the letter if need be. But a lot of the points are here. The key is, I think, is introducing it as legislation that's a single item, and it's homestead relief. It's reducing that maximum increase from 3% to 2% and not assessing a new structure value to a homestead property that is mitigating for flood. So and it has to be presented as a single item. And these are the things that we need to do it. It's like, I would say it's like a Save My Florida Home, where you have your roof, but you also have your windows. So this is, it's 2 actions under the same agenda, the same idea of reducing homestead and maintaining our homestead properties, because there was more residents in Madeira Beach in 1960 than there are now.
And Commissioner Kurt, just to clarify, the reduction in the homestead would be a reduction for all homesteaded properties statewide.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah, right. So to convince the non-coastal property owners to support and vote in favor of the legislatively adopted change, here's why we would like you to vote.
Well,
You'll get the benefit of the lower homestead increase year after year, and then coastal communities can, as you stated.
That's something that would have to be hashed out, but yeah, I mean, basically the House Joint Resolution in 2021 was for mitigation purposes. So.
And then separately was the homestead.
Well, no, it was homestead. It was, yeah, you're talking about the
3 to
reduction
2,
in 3
right.
to 2%. Yeah. But I think if the board feels like something we want to consider, that we draft a letter to both the Senator Sigley and to Representative Cheney
And for
And-
I'm sorry.
and for RJ, if that's.
Yes, yeah. I was gonna just keep in mind, just kind of in the back thinking, so lowering the homestead cap also lowers the revenue, but I don't believe it
I
would be
would-
such
I
a
would
big
dis-
impact for us.
I would disagree. You're lowering the homestead, but you're not lowering I mean,
the
the
values.
county is going to assess and change
Right,
and
right.
change
Sure.
their rates based
Yeah.
on
But,
the
but if
revenue
you,
that they need.
right, but you know, and again, back to simplistic, if you collected $3 on an increase the following year, it'll be $2.
It's just-
But again, I think we have such a small our percentage of homestead properties has declined apparently along with our population because those have been converted into non-homesteaded.
Right, so
So it doesn't, the impact isn't felt as much as other cities where, 70, 80, 90% are homesteaded.
right, so the county is getting a larger percentage of their revenue from non-homestead properties, but they're still getting the same amount of revenue that they need. It's just coming from a different
Different
bucket.
source.
It's either coming from business or from people that are not homestead.
I recently went to a mayor's breakfast and RJ was there, our lobbyist, and we were speaking along the same lines, and he had a great idea. And it was, instead of the issues that Madeira Beach had with the raising of the homes and the city would front the money, and then there were issues, now the state part of FEMA is coming after the city for money because that he had the great idea of having a fund from the state, that the state drove all of this and the state fronted the money. And I thought that that was a great idea. I don't know if that is something that could be interjected into here, is a line item, maybe number 3, underneath the 3 to 2% and then not assessing of the new construction or repair construction costs. Just an idea I wanted to put out there about that. Just something to think about.
Somebody gonna craft a letter, or are you gonna start working on that?
I can start working on that.
Well, thank you kindly. Is there any public comment on this? We'd still like to hear what you have to say. If you have anything. We don't bite, please come up. All right, we'll close public comment on this and move on. Next up, we have city manager. We have RFP 2024-01.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Mayor and Commission. We, as a suggestion from our Civil Service Commission that has been working on the city's personnel manual, it was suggested that we take a look at the city's compensation plan, classification and HR functions related to the compensation plan. And so we issued an RFP a few months ago. We did receive back 8 responses. They were reviewed by city staff, a committee, and then also reviewed by the Civil Service Commission at 2 meetings. And the recommendation is to proceed and to proceed with, after, again, discussions at those Civil Service Commission meetings, to proceed with the city negotiating an agreement with the firm called the Gearing Group out of the 8 that submitted a reply. The study will essentially, again, review, evaluate, give us ideas on our HR compensation and classification plans. In other words, how our processes work in terms of how salaries are determined, how job classifications are applied. Are our job classifications accurate in terms of exempt versus non-exempt? Or in other words, are all the positions that are salaried properly classified as salaried or not? And they provide that, those provisions. And then simply look at how we compare with other similar demographic cities as best as you can for each job classification in terms of the rate of pay and what increases have been, and also to look at the benefits, what we offer relative to, again, neighboring or comparable cities. So it's wanted to bring this to you for your discussion, your input. And it appears that in the agenda memo that I wrote, the fiscal impact is there would be an expense to compensate the firm to do the study. And that is currently what they provided, about a little under $38,000. We had amended our budget for the study of approximately $50,000. However, the next step would be your at this point, your comments, your review, suggestions, et cetera, and then the next step would be to speak with Gearing Group and obtain an agreement. We would bring back an agreement to you at the May 8th, a regular commission meeting for approval, and have the firm begin the study. Should take about 12 weeks for them to do that. Series of meetings with staff, and they will again review, as I stated already several times, our HR compensation and classification plans.
So, Mr. Gomez, just for clarification, Gearing, if we go with them and we budgeted 50,000, their cost, they come up with 37,640, is to analyze our current model, what
Correct.
we have here in the city, and then maybe compare it to other cities that are similar to ours, and then come back with a packet or some kind of
Correct.
suggestions based on what they see. Okay,
Mhm.
thanks. Just wanted to understand that.
There's
Thanks.
some other details in the
Right.
agenda memo as to what would occur, but essentially. yeah.
And it sounds like the Civil Service Committee, you and other members of the staff have evaluated all the other
Yes.
companies.
Yes,
This
Recommended
this
firm.
rose to the top.
yes.
Got it.
Are they a local company?
Yeah, they're Florida-based and they've done
Okay.
numerous studies throughout our area and the entire state of Florida. I forget exactly where they're headquartered. I think their reply is in the packet. But they do have the representative is in Manatee County. I don't believe they have an office directly here in Tampa or Pinellas County, but they are, I mean, local. And Palm Beach Gardens is where they're headquartered, but they, obviously, a lot of this would be aside from the interviewing staff to determine what some of the job, what the jobs are, what our employees do for specific job classifications. A lot of it is an electronic review and comparison and evaluating and obtaining the correct, accurate data from, multiple other jurisdictions, but specifically ones that we compete with for personnel. So like Treasure Island, St. Pete Beach, et cetera, to do that. So I know in a prior world up the road that we used them for a similar study many years ago, and my recollection, there were no issues. They did a very good job in the work that they do.
Do you remember if you accepted their
Yes, yeah, I
recommendations?
think the city did.
Implemented?
Yes.
Right. Got it.
I have a quick question on page 86. I don't understand. It says Gearing Group proposes an inclusive project fee of $27,640 to complete all objectives outlined in this proposal and corresponding RFP for the initial report, yet in the summary, we're given something much higher. What-
They added, if I'm recalling correctly, they added 10,000 for to look at all job classifications rather than just a sample of them. But that's something that will work out in the agreement, just exactly what that will be. Oh, 45, sorry.
So basically, the city's asking for approval to negotiate.
Yeah, essentially to come up with an agreement and then bring that agreement back.
Okay.
Yeah, they listed essentially comprehensive job description, review, revision, and development at 10,000 more. And that's where it came up with the 37,000.
Oh, okay, underneath.
Yeah, underneath the chart on that page. I just have it up on the big screen.
So which option would it be? That would be the
Number one.
number one.
But again, we'll essentially negotiate and determine what the final rate will be. I just listed the 37,640 to include number one.
Right, so I take it that, since it was in the budget, that this is something that's been discussed for a couple of years now.
No, the Civil Service Commission has been meeting since before I arrived to redo the city's personnel manual. That came up a couple of times in the time that I've been here. So I was just kind of guessing that this would come up at some point. And so just added it to the budget.
Are you aware of any study that's been done prior to this?
The last one the city had was in 2019. Yeah, I think it was in 2019,
Mhm.
before COVID.
Hmm.
2019 BC,
What would have changed in a couple of years?
COVID. No, I don't, it's been just the economy overall. I think the work sector and again, government, private, there have been some significant changes as people were forced to work from home remotely. The cost of just goods and services, inflation increasing substantially after a lot of cities and just a lot of industries have been struggling to fill positions. It's just been a struggle and reason if we've had to make the adjustments to stay competitive. Almost every other city has had to do the same. It's just a different, obviously this cliche as it sounds, it's a different world.
Did the Civil Service Commission request this?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I
Okay.
arrived, it was already a kind of a discussion.
A work in
and-
progress?
Yes, and
Okay.
I mean, since the last time was 2019, there's an HR group, various cities that meet, their HR representative, and they had talked about some cities are doing this much more frequently.
That
So
was my
for
next
us, it'll be,
question.
yeah, for us, it'll be 5 years approximately. Should it be done every 2 or 3? Probably. It does come at a cost, but I think once you get a good baseline, as long as we don't have a pandemic or some other significant altering event, then your data should be good and we would be able to adjust. Because again, you can call your neighbor and how much do you pay for a public works technician? What do you pay your firefighter that's been here 5 years? I mean, we can obtain that data, but analyzing, comparing it, and putting it in a narrative that makes sense is they're the experts in this. We don't do this every day, although we certainly can, because it's not terribly complicated. Again, we're not experts in it, but
Just time consuming.
it's time consuming, but again, they're the experts and able to do the comparisons and tell us this is where you are relative to all these other.
But
criteria.
it's not just salary comparisons, right? It's
No,
all,
it's-
the whole structuring of
It's
our.
the structure of our classifications and also again, how are we complying with the Fair Labor Standards Act? There are numerous compliance with state statute, with Department of Labor. Are we, all of that? I mean, there's federal, state and local that we have to comply with, not just our own personnel codes and our code of ordinances or anything in our charter. So, and it can be complex, especially the FLSA, whether a job is exempt or is not exempt. I can tell you that I think you were at one meeting, Mayor, where we were discussing several job classifications and there were differences as to how they would apply. So that's where I think their expertise is what you're paying for. We want to make sure that all of our jobs are properly classified and that we are not somebody that is entitled to, if they do work more than the 40 hours, are entitled to overtime versus those that we
Our salary.
determine as salaried.
Mhm.
I'm having a hard time about the $37,000 for a 12-week review of what our employees' positions are. Doesn't Megan Powers right now have, is she HR also
Yes.
assistant, right?
Mhm.
Okay. We're not voting on this tonight, correct?
No,
We're
this
just
is,
talking about it.
yep,
Okay.
discussion, review, and
Maybe next time, if it's broken down even better, where I understand about what we are going to get out of this for spending $37,000, I need to really see it and understand it. So, right now, I mean, I'm really apprehensive, but, we'll talk about it some more.
You need something
Thank
more
you.
tangible.
Exactly. It's a lot of money for 12 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner. It's a lot of money and I would like to know the devil's in the details, right?
Yes.
But the big picture for me, it seems like, yeah, it's 5 years ago and employment has changed in the last 5 years. And I'd like to make sure that we are competitive and that we are on the right track to maintaining quality employees. So I agree with you, but I'd like to see the details, but I'm in favor of something like this happening.
Yeah, well, they're in the agenda memo starting, and I have it up on the screen, A through F, that just give you an overview of exactly what we're looking, but in the short of it is, how are we managing everything HR personnel? So when we have a vacancy, how we advertise, to how we bring somebody into, how we manage that entire process, to do we have job descriptions, and are those job descriptions actually, are they accurate? Are they, because that's not something we're reviewing or have been reviewing every month or every year, for one. Second, or continuing essentially, are they proper, is each job properly classified, as I said, under the Fair Labor Standards Act? And then the biggest part of this is the salaries. How do we compare with every other city that's, again, in our area, because we are competing for employees? So they will look at all the other comparable cities and compare all the jobs that we have with what, depending on what the jobs actually do, because even though it might have the same job title, the jobs may be doing fewer things in one city, more things in another, or just different related activities. Again, a rec leader one in one city may just be just special events because they have so many special events, but in another city, they may be working on special events. They may have a license to do the elementary or middle school after care or summer camps. They may also be involved in overseeing athletics programs. So there's just these differences that not all the job positions are the same. So they will review that to see what should the compensation be then for those jobs relative to what other cities are doing. So they're going to tell us if in the end, are you complying with all the laws? And really the second one, are you competitive in paying employees? Have you lost employees because of salaries? I think we know we have in some areas. Are your salaries good enough, again, relative to other cities, that you're retaining your employees? Which I think we're getting there. We're probably the closest we've ever been, or at least in the last 5 to 7 years, I should say. So that's what this study is for. That again, the last one was in 2019.
Looks like page 41 through 43 outlines it, week 1 through 12.
Yes,
Right.
on their reply.
On their report,
correct.
right. Got it.
Is a copy of the last report available that
Yeah, we can provide
send
that.
a,
I think we have,
don't print it out. If you can provide a link via email or something that we can see it instead of,
I saw a printed copy the other day.
we don't.
It's on our website.
I think last civil service packet.
Thank you, Clara.
City clerk, if you wouldn't mind, I know personally, if you could just send me a link.
I'll
No.
be happy to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, is there any public comment on that? Please come up. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you for taking the time.
John Hendricks, 569 Normandy Road. You stole my thunder. I knew we had done one of these in recent years. And I think the city has done a good job in staying very competitive. Honestly, I think it's probably a waste of $37,000. You can easily check with other cities in the area to find out what they're paying. I think you'll find that we're extremely competitive, especially since we're furnishing health insurance to all the employees. So I would think twice about dropping 38 grand into this new study. We study stuff to death. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment on that? This topic, please come up. All right, we'll close public comment on this at this time. If the commissioners, do you have any other comments? Okay, we shall move on then. Next up, we have the Reddington EMS Station Funding Agreement. Chief?
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. This is the clean final agreement with the county for the Reddington EMS station. Really, the only thing that they had to change was in previous agreements with other municipalities, they would make it so the city or the city would have to front all the costs, and then you would petition the county for reimbursement. And they would do that within the 45-day state law. But what they did is they changed it so I have access to all of those funds. So no, it's not going to be any financial burden to the city at all.
So we're not going to have to pay for staffing?
No, the staffing will be covered. Once the station is built,
Uh-huh.
then the county will provide EMS funding, and then that is more than enough to cover.
But we'll manage the staffing.
Yep.
And then the apparatus, they're going to pay for that too?
They're going to buy our current medic unit from us, and then they're going to put it over there, and then it'll become county funded.
I see.
Yeah. And that's the plan. And then we can go back to the drawing board, and I've already had meetings with the city of Seminole and Treasure Island to see what their future holds for their types of apparatus that they're going to purchase. That way there's no duplication of efforts. So once the county moves this unit over to the Reddingtons, then we can work collaboratively with other departments. Hey, where do you need a squad? There's no squad available in this area. And, we can try to figure out kind of a different way of funding things. And again, the EMS funding will pay for this, for the staffing.
Okay, question about ISO rating. Now we're changing our staffing from 5 to 3 in the main house. Is that considered a substation of ours? And it's still contiguous of 5 staffing that we're not going to have? I don't want to be, we're not going to have you come back here and say, I need 2 more people per shift.
No.
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Yep, I already did all the research on that. Should not affect our ISO rating at all. And it would actually, it's a long way away. If we didn't have all the mutual aid agreements that we have with every fire department in Pinellas County, they stated to me at our first ISO review that I did that our ISO would be like a 3 because we had these mutual aid agreements in place, that gives us that minimum staffing requirement. And I think the minimum staffing requirement off the top of my head is a minimum of 12 firefighters from the same department on a first alarm. It'll be very difficult for us to ever get to that point, but you never know what the future holds.
The bottom line, we're doing a service for the community, and it's not going to cost us anything. Pinellas County
They're funding
going to take care of business.
Yep, they're funding the entire station. It was I think I presented before, it was a dead project. And Mayor Rostek, you were there at the meeting with Barry Burton and the county commission, some of the county commission, the Reddington mayors. And, I petitioned them that station is needed for EMS coverage north of us to meet the response times of 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And you, like I said, you were in the meeting, everybody agreed, and here we are.
Well, you have my full support,
I appreciate
commissioners.
it.
I'm in favor of this.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
100%. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this? All right, public comments closed. Next item up is John's Pass Village Activity Center zoning workshop.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor and Commission, before we turn it over to Jenny, we will bring back the agreement to you for approval at the May 8th regular commission meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. First off, I just want to say thank you so much for attending the workshops. I think they went extremely well. We got a lot of good feedback from those 3 meetings. I'm just going to go over a few of these slides just for anybody watching and to refresh your memory of what we're talking about. So go down to this. And this is a presentation that we showed at all 3 public workshops, so the 13th, 18th, and 20th. So what we're really focusing on now is the zoning. We've adopted the Johns Pass Village Activity Center at the countywide level, our comprehensive plan level, which is the future land use. And then now we're really focusing on that zoning map and having it accompanying zoning to this new land use. And so with the zoning, we're really talking about the land development regulations and the code of ordinances and focusing on the zoning districts. In each zoning district, they have uses. So you have primary use, you'll have accessory uses, and then you also have special exception uses. Special exception uses must be granted by the special magistrate. And then we have setbacks, building height, which is measured by the design flood elevation. And then there's special requirements in some of the zoning districts. The height is measured from the design flood elevation, which is the base flood elevation that's taken off of the FEMA maps, the firm. And so we start our measurement right there at the design flood elevation, and then we measure upwards. And then there's certain elements that can exceed the height, such as architectural features and mechanical units. And what we're seeing with newer construction, that average floor height is around 11 to 14 feet. Whereas in the past, they were a little shorter. And then the setbacks are taken from the property lines, and that varies from district to district. So the area that we're talking about tonight and just throughout this whole process is really right here. You can see on this proposed zoning map. So we're breaking it down into 6 different character districts, which will be reflected in the zoning. So when we had these 3 public workshops, we went through the presentation and then went through each character district by character district, getting input from everybody at round tables. So I provided you with tonight. We just finished this a few minutes before we came up here. So it's a very rough draft, but we did want to provide something for you to look over. The next workshop, we'll really go over this, have more data, make sure that all these numbers are correct. But we just wanted to provide you with something, some feedback from those meetings. That's really all I have today. I know that probably not going to go over this tonight, but if you want to take this home, we also have a few copies in the back there as well. But just know that this is a very rough draft. Just taking all the numbers from those easels that we were writing down. So we also still have the worksheets. Now I know not everybody turned in their worksheets. So this is, I think, a better representation of all the tables and kind of the discussions around the tables, but we're also scanning in the worksheets. We'll be looking at those one by one as well.
The roundtable discussion was a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that went so well. So we'll be definitely doing that in the
It was like
future.
brainstorming every table, you know. Did you get your opinion, the height level? Do you agree that each table kind of, along with the setbacks and the height, like each table kind of agreed?
Yeah, that was great. And then it really sparked discussion and people really stayed on track and, just learning from your neighbors as well. And then us walking around, I think that was really helpful. So we'll definitely be doing more of those round tables, not just for this, but for other things in the future.
Great job.
Thanks.
I just want to let you know, I actually got a couple of emails from folks that came and they were all positive, very positive, appreciated the city engaging them. And I thought it was great. There were residents and there were developers at the same table at times. And I thought this should be interesting. And it was,
Yeah.
but it humanized both perspectives. And I thought that was a good idea. And you got a lot of praise.
Great, thank you.
Excellent job. Is there any public comment on this? Please come up. We'd like to hear what you have to say.
Good evening, everybody. John Conley, 600 Normandy. I went to all three meetings. It was excellent. But I'm missing one thing here. I'm missing some kind of a medical center, because after this growth transpires and we have 3 million people visiting here, and there'll be 3 million plus people visiting here, because you're going to add hotels, buildings, so on and so forth. I don't see anything, and maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but to me, medical services in a community is one of the most important things that we all should strive for. I watched the hurricane presentation, and Corey Snyder's, the sheriff, said the average person in Madeira Beach is 75 years old. So after that, I was up in Clearwater, and I got off and I came down, and from the Clearwater Bluffs all the way down to Madeira Beach, there is no medical building, no doctor's office. There's dentists, but no doctors. I'm not trying to take anything away from the fire department here. The fire department is fantastic, but there's going to be a time when they're not going to be able to provide. And we're going to say, why didn't we do that? And I'm trying to get this in now, so we're all thinking about it, trying to implement it in our future plans. And I said this to Jen the other day, I wanted to bring this tonight because I think it's most important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? We'd love to hear what you have to say. Okay, commissioners, anything else to close this one out?
Yeah,
Oh, please.
again, Jenny did a great, well, the whole staff did a great job. It went very well. It brought up a lot of questions that I don't know that you had the answers for, but you documented the questions so that we can get the answers or create the answers, determine the answers. On your elevation drawing, it's easy to look at that and say, oh, okay, basically the DFE is the first level. I'd sent some information where
Yeah.
it's really not. The DFE is, depending on where grade is, let's call it 8 feet. It's not 14 feet. So, because you're starting at the water level. So that's going to determine, we're going to come up and we're going to agree on heights, but we have to understand what that means. And the other thing was, and you answered my email, and hopefully we can put this into the discussion. I believe that the height should be at the eave, the roof eave, because one of the great architectural features of the past is some of the roof lines. And we don't want future development to eliminate those roof lines because we're trying to get maximum footprint, air-conditioned area into a space. So if you're measuring to the eave, then you can still be creative with your architectural look of the roof lines, because some of them are very tall. And I just think that is something that is an attraction for Johns Pass Village. So if you can take what I kind of started, because I know it's all rough and it's just kind of trying to get my head around what these elevations actually mean. What's a 2-story structure look like? What height above BFE? What does that look like? What does a 3-story look like? What does a 4-story look like? And then I think I had mentioned to Megan Powers, maybe if the board is open to it, we can do we can actually have public meeting and just go down to John's Pass and look at some of the heights and structures and not try to make decisions sitting here by, yeah, I was down there a few days ago and I remember, on certain streets, it looked a certain way versus being right down there and talking about this stuff. I think it might be fruitful. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's excellent. And I did get your email, and Marcy and I have started kind of marking up and so we can bring that hopefully at the next meeting.
It
And
was just a
then,
start.
yeah, but it's helpful, and that can help other people understand, we see this stuff all the time. So sometimes it's hard to go back and say, okay, well, if someone doesn't see this all the time, then how do we depict it to them?
And one of the things I don't know that I really touched on it, but when I spoke with Marcy about it at one of the meetings was years ago in Johns Pass Village there was a fire, I understand, and they had to rebuild a section.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that that's elevated. Is that a requirement?
So you can flood-proof commercial, so I'm not exactly sure why that's elevated. I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I was told it was elevated due to FEMA. I don't know that, but that's what I
I
was
don't know
told.
why it was elevated. I think we were trying to find the building plans and we haven't been able to find them, so maybe that would shed some light if we were able to find those plans.
I'll just-
But I know that you can flood-proof commercial. I'm not exactly sure why that section was elevated when it was rebuilt, though.
It was an advantage because it was.
Yeah.
Both the surf styles are elevated too slightly. I think one off of Gulf Boulevard, I think it's at least 8 feet from grade. I'd have to check the plans. again. I
Andrew,
haven't-
please move
Turn your
your
mic on, please.
microphone Closer. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Both surf styles are elevated slightly, but not to like
Not to that.
face flood elevation, but they were raised up slightly. But I'd have to check the plans to see how high. I think one of them was raised up 8 feet from grade.
Thank you so much.
I think you did a wonderful job. Everybody embraced what you did. My hat off to you.
Thank you.
And I want to give the accolade where the accolade is due, and I think it's the city manager who came up with this idea, and I hope I'm citing the right person, that possibly we can adjourn a commission meeting and take a walking tour of John's Pass with flyers for people to tell them, this is how high this building is, this is how high this one is, and that way they can see it in real time. And I think it was, you. Okay, yeah, I don't,
Yes, we will discuss to do that and schedule that with all of you and have most likely a special meeting to take a walking tour with the information as you stated, but I think that was kind of a group discussion about what else could we do to make this, at least for the 5 of you, to get the most information that you can and the most out of it. So we will schedule that over the next month or a few weeks. And of course, we have to follow all the same processes as a public meeting, et cetera. And of course, it'll be advertised, et cetera. And yeah, we'll probably begin here and then head down and go through that process. So.
excellent idea.
And you're buying lunch?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we can go anywhere, but
Just
not
check.
sure if it would be a lunch or middle of the
dinner?
day or evening or one of those, but it could get very, very crowded out in the village, but we'll look at the schedule calendar, get with all of you.
Yeah.
And staff as well. So.
Yeah.
They're the most important ones, I think, to provide the data and explanations.
Absolutely. Is there any other public comment on this? Just want to make sure. Okay. Commissioners, anything else you have to say? Okay. Next up is ordinance 2024-02, open accessory structures. Since this has been out in public before, I would like to have public comment first on this. If anyone would like to come up and speak. No? Okay. Yeah, please, if, you know, because this has already been out there and everybody knows about, it, I would like, please come talk to us.
Chuck Dillon, 529 Lillian Drive. I'm kind of surprised in how all the wording in here is kind of, you've got one max and then another max. So like as an example, maximum size and quantity, single family use, 8 by 10 with a height of 10 feet. But then you got a total max of 20 feet. And so which is the max? Kind of confusing.
All right, we will certainly look at that. Any other public comment on this? Okay, public comment is closed. Commissioners, or Janie, would you like to?
Okay, yes, I'll go over this. I know it's been a while since we've visited the open accessory structures. Just to refresh your mind, this was brought before the BOC, and then it was directed to staff to really look at the accessory structure section to allow for an open accessory structure like a tiki hut, gazebo, something of that matter. Because currently in our code, we have accessory structures like sheds, enclosed accessory structures, but we really didn't have any definition or instruction for tiki huts. Now, we do have something for cheeky huts, and that is that cheeky huts don't have to meet the Florida Building Code, but they still have to meet the planning and zoning standards and floodplain regulations. So when a cheeky hut comes in, planning staff still has to look at that, where it's going to be, how big it's going to be, and how high it is. And so our standards right now are really more for sheds. So in a lot of the areas, they are 8 feet by 10 feet, 8 feet wide by 10 feet long by 8 feet high. And that's quite small for an open or cheeky hut, open accessory structure, cheeky hut. So that's really what we were directed to look at. I know that was last year, so months ago. So I'm just going to go through the changes in this. I think the discussion in the memo really goes over it, so I'll just kind of go through that. So this ordinance creates multiple sections, which includes new sections like the applicability of division, definitions, building permits required, accessory structure maintenance, things that are excluded from permitting, construction trailers and outdoor kitchens. So you can see this throughout the ordinance, all these new sections that we didn't have. And the final version allows for open accessory structures like your tiki huts or gazebos at a percentage of the total lot size of 3.5%. So Marcy and I really sat down, looked at all the code enforcements as well as just looking at Google Earth, seeing a lot of these tiki structures. How big are they? How big are they compared to the lot? That 3.5% really covered a lot of those, and it was an appropriate size that we thought. We also brought that to Planning Commission quite a few times, workshopped the size, and that's really what we landed on was 3.5 of the total lot size area. And so that's in addition to the already allowed enclosed accessory structure. The amendments also create setbacks for the open accessory structures, considering the side yard setback for each zoning district, and then the structural elements of the seawall on the lots on the water. And then in the C4 zoning district, we were aware that there are issues with the accessory structures that are required by regulations that conflicted with the current codes. So we added some language to address those concerns. Also, the code did not address construction trailers, and that's kind of near the end. So we didn't have anything in our code really talking about construction trailers. So we added that as well with time limitations, setbacks, and then evacuation plans. And then also we talked to FDM, talking about FEMA considerations, floodplain requirements. On the allowance of permanent outdoor kitchens, we also talked to them about open accessory structures. Made sure that everything was good in our ordinance. And they were fine with the allowance of outdoor kitchens. We talked about this with Planning Commission as well. So allowing for outdoor kitchens, we know if we're gonna allow for tikis, we know that people will be putting in outdoor kitchens. They just kind of go hand in hand. So making sure that we have something in the code to regulate that. So that's that new section as well. Now, staff is aware that there are concerns with the accessory structures in the C4 working waterfronts, and a lot of those abut residential neighborhoods. So one thing that we discussed was the noise regulations, and we really reflect Pinellas County's noise regulations. If you'd like to adopt something with additional noise regulations for, these sheds or additional accessory structures, we would advise that we would look at the noise ordinance and really put any regulations into that section, and instead of it being in the accessory structure section.
So you're, sorry, just to be clear, you're suggesting addressing the sound in our, on our sound ordinances for the entire island, not just with regards to these structures.
We got some concern on like mechanical units and mechanical accessory structures in the C4, so like working waterfronts that are near residential areas. Absolutely, I can see that being a concern. I'm just saying, I don't think that putting noise regulations in the accessory structure is the best place to put it. I think it would be better suited in the noise regulation section of our code. So if you wanted to go forward with additional requirements on noise for working waterfronts or things in the C4 that could arise from allowing these accessory structures or accessory structures that may already be there, I think that the noise section in the code would be
But
a
just
better place.
hypothetically, if we wanted to create something specific for these outdoor structures, we could in the noise area, right? We could, in the part of our ordinances that addresses noise, we could
Yes.
say specifically in these areas, we want this is just hypothetically, I don't know what it would be, 60 decibels or stop at this time specifically for what we deem an outdoor structure. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, something like that.
put it-
Or
but put
or
it in
just
that area.
uses next to residential, maybe just re-looking at that. Our noise section in our code really just reflects what the county does.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just didn't
That's
want to
okay.
let that get by me. Thank you.
So I have that in your packet on page 99, just the Pinellas County noise regulations, which is what our code refers to. And then I also have in there that there were multiple public meetings for accessory structures. So it's been a while that it's been seen here at BOC, but we did have a workshop October, November, and then it did go to Planning Commission for a lot of really good discussions, November and then January and February. So we really workshopped a lot of these things with Planning Commission. I think that what we came out with this ordinance, I think it really reflects going back and forth in Planning Commission, and I think it's pretty good. There is one thing that we re-looked at was the height of, here I can scroll to it. The height of open accessory structures in like single family, duplex and multifamily use. So we reached out. Yeah, it's right here. The section 110, 484 on page 104, just about the height. And we reached out to a few contractors, and it seems that 15 feet is pretty reasonable. So we could lower that instead of 20 to 15 feet.
Yeah, I believe a 20-foot, let's think about this for a second. If you live in an elevated structure, which your second floor living area is at about 12 foot, and you're going to allow a 20-foot roof, you're looking at your living area and you're looking at somebody's roof. I don't think anybody would be too happy about that. I mean, could we get it down to 14 foot? I mean, that's all driven by pitch of the roof, right?
Yeah, so when Marcy and I recently talked to a few of the contractors that we talked to before, just really talking about the height. And so they said that a 15-foot would really encompass everything that would be like residential size. So 15, 14, I think that would be fine.
It's an outdoor structure though. I mean,
Why do you need 14 foot?
I'm thinking 12.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about your vertical beams go up, whatever you want to call them, poles, and then you got to be able to have your cross beams, your lintels, whatever you want to call them. So the normal person's got to be able to walk underneath. Plus, so that's at least 7 foot, if not 8. And then you got to have a decent pitch on the roof to shed water. So I'm not 100% up on the construction trades, pitches of roof. I don't know. I'd think 14-ish
Measured from where and to where? You're talking measured from grade
from
From grade to the
grade.
very
to
tip.
the tip peak
The
of the
peak.
roof.
Exactly. And I know a lot of
So-
these tiki structures have quite a
Point.
steeper pitch.
Right.
And I think that's because of airflow and trying to have the heat.
But
you
your
know,
set,
going from
but your
the-
setbacks, kind of prevent obstructed view for your neighbors, so you're only would be obstructing your own view. So if you're not wise enough to regulate your height so that you still have a great view, you're only impacting yourself. So I wouldn't be, I'm not concerned about the height personally. The less restrictive, the better, in my opinion. That's why I think Mr. Dillon suggested, you know, if it's 3.5% of your total lot size, why do we need to restrict it by 10 foot by 12 foot? Why couldn't it be 18 by 14? Or, you know, depending on your lot and how you're trying to do it. And if you already have if you have a pool out there and you wanted to create more of a bar effect, which is longer and thinner.
I thought we were talking about heights right now, though.
Well, I'm just,
Okay.
okay, but as far as the height, I really don't, I don't care. I think 20 feet, they're gonna build it to what is gonna be good for their selves.
Understand, but you got to worry about the next door neighbor. If they're in an elevated home and their living area is on the second floor, they're going to have 8 foot of roof as they look out their window. You don't see
No,
that
but
as a
because of the setbacks, I don't think so. If you had if you have a property and you're restricted, you can only bring it in, you know, so far. It has to be basically behind your house. I don't know how it's really restricting your neighbor's property.
If my neighbor had a 20-foot, it would be in my living room.
View wise, sure, that's all you would be
Yeah,
looking at.
obviously.
Yeah,
view-wise.
yeah.
You mean from backyard to backyard?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll allow it. This is pretty controversial. Come
Well,
on.
here's the thing, okay, so basically, so if you're talking about a structure that's 14 by 18, okay, so your pitch, if you have a 7-foot wall, and anybody can walk underneath a 7-foot wall, and if you have a 4-foot rise in the middle, where's your, you know, it's simple. You know, so you just do the math. Half of the 14 foot would be 7 foot in, so you're 7 foot there on the outside, 11 foot on the inside. So you don't have to be anywhere near these elevations. And that's having a big, you know, 14 by 18. Half of it's, you know, so the center would be 11 foot, maybe 12. So as the mayor said, you know, 12, 14 foot would be very sufficient. And 14 foot would give you would be a 1-to-1 slope. If you got a 7-foot wall, 14-foot ceiling, half of that's 1-to-1.
I get what you're saying. I'm just saying,
Okay.
I don't know that who's gonna, I don't know. I don't like to be restrictive, but 15 feet, if that's more reasonable from the contractors, I'm okay with that. But yeah, I don't think you're really blocking your neighbors. I mean, you might, maybe there's other areas in the city that,
I mean, if we take the worst case scenario of the smallest lot and they can put with the setbacks as big as they can go, there's no way that a 20-foot from ground level to peak of the roof, that it's gonna look so out of place.
okay.
So,
So why would anybody design it,
well,
build it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, Jenny suggested possibly we come down to 15. I would say at least down to 15. Personally, myself.
I'm fine with that.
Rather 12. 15, I'll go.
Yeah, across all of the residential, the C1 or the R1, 2, and 3. Now, commercial's a different character all in itself, just because what we have up at the beach at the Don Comer. Can you imagine a very small structure against that giant building? You got a Matchbox car against a tractor trailer. It would look totally out of place. So I think there's got to be room for give and take in the commercial sector.
Which right now it's,
Would you like to
right
come
now
back
it's
up?
20 feet.
Are we okay? We'll let the audience come back up and talk for a minute or two. I think this is, we need to get some really good feedback here.
When this first came up, we discussed the size of the lot.
Sir, you're on the planning commission, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
If your lot is only 50 feet wide, you can't really put a 20-foot building because then you only have 15 on each side. We were looking at it as the neighbor and where it would sit and how far back and where the setbacks would be. If you had a triple lot, that's a different story. So we left it kind of in their hands with that there's some places that just can't, you couldn't even put a shed on the property because there's no setbacks. So, but we never came up with a height. We came up with, I think, 14 feet. We left it at 14 feet. But that would be a big lot. In other words, like 90, 80, 90, 100-foot wide lot. I wouldn't want to see 14 feet on a 30-foot lot because, first of all, you're going to block the views on both sides of your neighbor. They're going to be wild. So we were trying to make it a bit lower. But then what happens is the cheeky huts are pushed very, very high and very narrow. So we kind of left it with them. But we were trying to leave it as to everybody in different sections, you know, that have to come before the building department and then kind of like pick out what would fit there. And that's how we left it. But we never went above 14 feet.
All right. Thank you so much. Commissioners, what do you think about that? 14?
There we go, planning commission, 14 feet.
Yeah,
I vote for 14 feet.
I would move forward with that, Commissioner Kerr.
Again, I did 15, 14. It really
Okay.
doesn't make a whole lot of difference.
Okay.
I'm one to be less restrictive.
Understand. Commissioner McGeehan, you've been awful
You have,
silent.
you have,
Well, I've been listening to this.
you have small, very small parcels,
I
but you
agree with
also have
Commissioner
very
Kerr, though. I just hate
you have
being
very
restricted, you know.
large,
14.
you know,
also.
backyards. And if you're on a pie-shaped lot, you might have a 150-foot backyard wide. But then you also have your 40-foot backyards. So
Okay. Question then, what would be the purpose to have a 20-foot peaked roof? It's non-livable space.
I'm not saying I would want one. I'm not even saying
Okay,
anybody should
okay.
want one. but I'm just asking, do we need to regulate it? You know, that's all.
I believe so, considering we have so many that are out there now that have been unpermitted, that I think we have to take a stand to protect everybody's interests. Commissioner McGeehan, like I said, you've been awful silent.
on
We'd
this
like to
issue.
hear from you.
I believe with Commissioner Kerr, you know. Less restrictive is what everyone should want, you know. Basically, if you buy a house, you pay your property taxes, but city, say, or county is going to tell you how to build, how high, how wide. You know, we want to be less restrictive. We want to be approachable, you know? And like we talked about this already about, I mean, this is really, okay, 14 or 15 or 16, you know? I'm good with all of that. You know, I'd say just being less restrictive so we can actually embrace our community and get more people to live here. Is probably the most important thing. So that's my opinion.
No, and that's fine, and we appreciate that. However, let's throw the shoe on the other foot. If we're gonna talk about allowing unrestricted on an accessory structure, let's pull the trigger, unrestricted height on a single-family dwelling. So there's got to be some give and take here that right now we're limited, what, 34 foot above the BFE, DFE? Something along those
It
lines.
depends on your zone, but.
Exactly, it depends on your zone. So I think if we don't place, oh no, I've been timed out.
You've been timed
Oh
out.
no. City manager, we'll talk later about this.
But the greatest thing that this,
But, you know, we have to have the city aesthetically pleasing in the various areas
Right.
where we can't have this castle over here and it's like, what the heck happened here? So we have to have uniformity, and the only way that we can have that at times is to make some limits. So,
well, okay.
limits.
And the Board of Commissioners and the mayor, the greatest part, one of the best parts about everyone up here is the ability to compromise.
Absolutely.
You know, I can agree to disagree, but also we all have the ability to compromise. And look, in the past, we've sat here and compromised on a lot of different issues.
Absolutely. John, you have something else to say? Then come on back up here. Okay, good point.
In defense of guidelines and ordinances,
Let's be nice.
there's a woman in my district whose neighbor built like a resort, tried to build a resort area
Mhm.
in their backyard. And part of that was a huge hut which drained into her property. And it turned out they had to take it down, but that was because we have restrictions for that. Right? So yes, I'm all about the less limitations, but within reason. I think the devil's in the details. I think you have to start somewhere, you know? And so 20 feet, I just think is unrealistic. I'd love to see it at 14, 15, okay, but the member of the planning commission who has researched this and thought it through recommended, the planning commission recommended maybe 14.
And I think we have to listen to these people on the planning commission because they've done their homework. They're sitting on this board with no remuneration and they care. They're residents of the city. And I think I would agree with 14 foot is where I would like to go with. Just, we need to keep things reasonable because if not, things will be unreasonable and that's no good.
14 or 15, I don't really care.
14's fine with me.
But lots on the water, you have to remember, there's a 12-foot rear setback. So off the seawall, you're already 12 foot back. You're not really interfering with your neighbor's view. Inland, that may be a different story. It's not going to impact me anyway. I don't think it's going to impact many, I'll put it that way. I don't want to make it personal. 14, 15, whatever staff recommends. Staff can come up with a recommendation. I'm fine with either one of them.
Okay, and this already went to Planning Commission, so this is what was recommended approval that's in your packet. So Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would have to come to you exactly how it's written, and then at the first reading, which will be next month, hopefully, well, then you can make that change to 14 or 15
So the
feet.
planning commission recommended 20 feet, but is
How it's
arguing
written
against it
right
now?
So we may have had discussions on the height, but this is what was recommended approval, was this
Okay.
version.
I don't have a problem with it coming at 14 feet from the very beginning, the first reading,
Okay.
because that's a recommendation from the planning commission. That doesn't necessarily bind them to the first reading as to what it should read like. That's their recommendation. And
Okay.
so I think it can come to the commission as 14
With that
feet.
14,
first reading.
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll do 14 feet for the, just so I have it correctly.
R1, 2, and 3?
R1, 2, and 3 for single-family uses, because remember, R3 is also on the beach side. So we're doing 14 feet here for single-family use, 14 feet for duplex and multifamily use. Temporary lodging, did we want to do 14 or 20?
Temporary lodging is still R3 though, correct?
It is R3.
Yeah,
So do we want to do 14?
I would
Alright.
guess. It's still considered a residential property.
Yes, I just want to make sure that I got everything correct. And then C1, 2, 3, and 4 remains the same.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Then that's what you'll see.
So
Okay.
just for clarity's sake, when you say remain the same, it's
Um,
currently 20 feet.
Yes.
On
So
the
you-
commercial properties.
Yeah,
Yes.
so everybody is, the consensus is it's going to be 20 feet in C1, C2, C3, and C4, even though the other ones are at 14 feet.
I thought you meant remain the same of what we were talking about.
That's what I wanted to clear
Oh,
up, make sure.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
20 feet in C1, C2, C3, C4, or did you want to reduce that to 14 as well?
I've been in the mindset of residential.
Yeah, now we have to go to commercial. I mean, let's look at Don the Beachcomber for a minute with what they have up there. A 20-foot to the peak from ground level there would look so far out of place compared to what's there now, considering the height of the existing concrete structure, if you will.
Is the eave is probably 12 foot there, isn't it?
It's pretty high.
Oh, it's hard.
So by the time you get to the pitch.
The peak of the roof there is probably 20,
20
30
feet.
foot. God, it's up to the
Look at,
third floor?
well, at least the second of
Up to
the,
the second anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the
20
second,
foot
the
makes
first living floor.
sense.
It's at least 20 feet.
Please come back up. It's okay. We need to hear this and work all of this out.
I believe down on the boardwalk, the old hut, which is, I believe the inside of that's 20.
Okay. All right. That gives us a reference.
But that's just the inside.
Yeah, yeah.
Total is
To
probably
the peak,
taller.
though,
Yeah.
so then you just have the materials in between, which can't be more than a foot or so.
I just don't want to give an opinion if I haven't completely molded around in my head. That, when you say the hut in John's Pass, you mean right there next, right next to
Patty's
Scully?
restaurant.
Oh, okay. But, and that's commercial and that's 20 feet. So that would make it a non-compliance if we change this. So I mean, well, that's not an exterior.
We appreciate that. We do.
Is that applicable though? Because we're talking about accessory structures and we're not talking about,
Yeah, that's like the primary structure.
that's the primary
there.
structure.
Yeah,
You know, we're talking about
But it just kind of gives you an idea
C1, C2,
So,
C3, C4 is 3.5%
of the law area.
of the lot.
Yeah.
So that's, we're talking about apples and oranges.
We are.
So it's not
Accessory
the
structure
same.
will be out by the pool.
It's not the same as in the residential area.
Mhm.
So maybe 20 feet is appropriate for that. 20 for the commercial, 14 for the residential areas.
I'm okay with that, but,
Okay.
You okay? We're okay with that? All right.
Okay, he'll come back to you with those.
I have a
those new
question, though.
numbers.
You mentioned in the beginning here, first page, e.g. tiki huts, gazebos as a percentage of the total lot size. Gazebos, define gazebo. Does gazebo need to have a roof? Or is a gazebo and can a gazebo be an open air structure where it doesn't have a roof? And if, is, in that case, is it not under this section? It's not restricted in size or height or design or, because I know a lot of, a lot of families struggle with the sun coming in their back, sliders, and they build gazebos, which are open air, which to date, I understand it's not a permitted structure because it doesn't have a roof. It has parallel boards on edge, so that when the sun is at an angle, you get shade into your sliders or windows or whatever.
The
So
pergola, are you talking?
pergola, is
pergolas?
that,
Yeah,
am I
yeah,
using the wrong term?
Yeah.
Pergola. So,
Well, when I think of a gazebo, I think of, the old fashioned,
Rectangular. Like
yeah.
Like you're-
excited.
Exactly, something that was built in like
something with a roof.
1910. An old
So
gazebo.
we're not talking
I'm
about
thinking-
pergolas.
Pergolas are open. I think we have, give me just a minute. Let me look up the open yard section. We're gonna go to the open sky section in the code. So I know that there is some discussion of pergola in there, instead of like your actual roofed, open accessory structure. I can't exactly remember what it says in there. It's open, yeah, open sky. There's arbors and trellises may be placed in the required front or side yard at least 10 feet from the property line. I think that's the only thing that we have. So I don't think that it says pergolas. That's what I was thinking of. It's the arbor and trellises.
So that would fall under that section. Is that a permitted, is that something you need to get a permit for?
Yes,
But it's not restricted based on
it just
open air,
has-
open accessory structure because it doesn't have a roof.
That's correct. That's how it's worded.
Okay.
That's something we could.
No, it's
always
perfect. Don't
change,
don't
but-
change it.
okay.
Don't add it to this.
Okay.
No, I think it's,
Okay,
but I want to be specific so that it doesn't come back later to say, well, no, we have this new
Perfect.
ordinance and you can't build that. Because typically it's right up near your home.
yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to go back to C4 for a minute.
Okay,
Sorry.
let's do it.
In regards to the noise ordinance, limiting hours of operation, would that go in the noise ordinance too, or is that something that would go here?
I think it would be better suited in the noise ordinance because the noise ordinance already has the hours of operation as well as the decibel level.
Okay, I'm good with
So,
that.
I'm just thinking if, you call the sheriff's department or code enforcement to come out to, a property or resident does, and, they're not going to know it's in the accessory structure section, but they will know the noise.
Noise ordinance, because we follow Pinellas County.
Exactly.
That makes perfect good sense, because we have to do something for the residents we're dealing with $15 million worth of assets that have to hear noise 60 decibels, 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
It can't continue. So that's the perfect avenue to have it addressed. That's wonderful.
Okay. So then would BOC want to direct planning staff to also look at the noise ordinance and
Please.
come back at a BOC workshop
Hmm?
to discuss that?
Mhm.
Okay. Just
I'd like
making
that.
sure.
And then maybe we need to take a walking tour in the evening to have an audio walking tour.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would just like to address the one item that Mr. Dillon brought up. All right, I believe that was his point, is why are we restricting the length and width of the structure when we're also providing a percentage of the overall footprint?
So the length and width, if you look at, let me pull it up here. So people following along on YouTube can see as well. So we do have lengths and widths that's currently in the code for enclosed accessory structures. Now for the open accessory structures, it would just be based on that 3.5%. So you could really configure that however you would want to.
Okay, I was.
You could have a
reading-
long, yeah, sorry, I meant to
Okay,
talk about that, so I'm glad you brought it back up. So you could have like a very long, like say if you wanted to have more of like a bar under a tiki structure, you could do something like that. It really provides more flexibility.
so
with
the open
design.
accessory structures are not regulated to
Yeah,
certain.
and another thing that we did is just making sure that all the enclosed accessory structures, sheds, are the same size. We did have it, or currently it's in the code that duplex and multifamily, the maximum size for like a shed is 6 by 8 by 8. And so that was unusual and didn't follow the other enclosed accessory structures. So we just made that all uniform
Okay,
by 10 by 10.
am I wrong in the C1, C2, C3, C4 zones? Doesn't it on page 146? Doesn't it say 8 feet wide by 12 feet long by,
Yes, that's for
but that's an
enclosed.
accessory, that's enclosed, okay.
Enclosed.
I'm-
Yeah, so it's,
I'm
so for
correcting
sheds, you
myself.
have basically like a rectangle and
Okay,
then a square.
perfect.
And then for open accessory structures, you're really given flexibility.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks for straightening me
Of
out.
course.
Well, thank you for covering all of the bases. Commissioners, any other comments on this? Okay, let's move on then. Potential fence code amendments.
Hello, my name is Joe. I've been with the city a couple months short of a year. And I primarily review permit applications for planning and zoning. And a lot of permit applications I review include fences. And I've noticed since I started, it's a hot topic for a lot of residents. They struggle to permit fences because the way the code currently reads, there's a lot of contradicting sections. A lot of different areas that aren't mentioned at all in the fence code. And then, so I kind of just drafted up with the help of obviously Marcy, Jenny, and the rest of my department, some areas that we might be able to improve it to help the residents and fence permit contractors. So that's kind of what I'm going to go through here. So basically, I'll just skip down to some of the recommendations. So we, a lot of these I'll see here. So just starting from the definitions, and we'll get back to this later, but we have a definition for a building line in our fence code. but it's not referenced at all in the fence code, so it's kind of just sitting there. Again, I'll get back to this later once we get to the height of fences. But basically here, we would just propose to add a little bit to that definition regarding variances, just addressing what exactly the setback would be. Then also, if you could go down to number 2 on that same page, temporary construction fencing. Right now, we don't mention it. We usually review it in permit applications for new constructions and require it then. So just wanted to add something there so that it's clear that you don't need another fence permit just for a temporary construction fencing.
By temporary construction fencing, you're meaning silt fence?
Yep, that would be an example.
Okay.
And then also in that, later on, I touched back on that on how long it would stay up after the permit. If you go down to openings, this was a big section. A lot of current fence manufacturers like Home Depot, a lot of their fences don't meet our open fence requirements. So I did some research here based on what other municipalities have in their fence code, based on common fence types from Home Depot, Lowe's, and just taking a look at a lot of different open fence permit applications we receive. Kind of revise, kind of allow a little more flexibility with open fences. And then I also kind of split up the open fence section and then openings for any fence, kind of splitting into 2 different sections shows there's a 4-inch diameter sphere requirement that's currently in the open fence section. That kind of separating that would show that it applies to all fences. And then also we want to talk about split rail fence is a certain type of fence that isn't currently addressed in the fence code that maybe we want to consider adding. So that's something we're looking at adding to the fence code. Not around swimming pools, but maybe in front yards if people wanted to allow that. Technically, they wouldn't be able to do that right now with the current code because it would have to meet the spacing requirements. So these sections basically kind of address the spacing requirements. And then back to the temporary fencing. We added a section, proposing to add a section here that goes a little more in depth on the temporary construction fencing. And then we have here that it would have to be removed after the construction is completed. Here we just propose 2 calendar days after.
I have a question.
Yeah.
About your temporary fencing.
Mhm.
Is it cited anywhere else in the Muni code or maybe building code when it comes to putting it in to do construction? Or is it all right here?
So I would have to look at it more in depth to see exactly where it says it. But right now, I think we have verbiage about requiring that you keep drainage on your property during construction, that you're not offsetting any during the construction process. Erosion control is required. So we touch about that in other sections, not in the fence code, but it's not very specific.
The reason I bring this up is I've spoken to Marcy about this before. I'm from up north where I know what reinforced silt fence is, the basic, and what's called super silt fence. And we live in a critical area, and it's my unprofessional opinion that things need to be changed to where super silt fence has to be used 100% of the time. I can show you just on my phone right here of silt fence that's been put in and it's failed a week later just because of the unnamed stormed or whatever blows in off the Gulf. So
Yep.
I would like to approach this issue down the road. Yes, it costs more money, but it's reusable.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into what it currently says in other sections. Then when we bring that to the next meeting, I can let you know there. And then also maybe if it's not addressed specifically there, we can talk about it in the fence code maybe bring some requirements
I,
on
I think
maintaining
we
it.
need to, because we need to protect why people want to come here on vacation. We can't have the money run off going into the storm drains, which leaches out into the Gulf. And
Mhm.
we're setting ourselves up and setting the environment up for failure.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yep. All right, so continuing on the top of page 114. Item number 5 here, we mentioned intersection visibility triangle in this other section of the Muni code. But I just wanted to add it here so that everything that anyone needs to know for a fence is right in the fence code section. They don't have to go searching around, oh, well, what about this? So it kind of reiterates that there. Down to height, which was another hot topic for a lot of residents. So currently, there's no clear answer on where the front yard starts and the rear yard starts and the side yard. So what we do now during permitting, and the reason this matters is because there's different height requirements based on if it's in the front yard or side yard. So right now, when I review permit applications, we go based on the building line of where the house ends, which for different people is different. Not every house ends at the same spot. So kind of what we're proposing here is to go by the zoning district setbacks. There's pros and cons to that. When people have a house that already exists beyond the required setback, right now they also get to extend their fence farther. And then also on the opposite, just because somebody decided not to build their house all the way to the maximum required setback, now they're not being able to build fences as far out just because they chose not to build their house to that far. So that kind of addresses it. Sometimes when we review permit applications, people try to get around this, and they're able to get around this by if their neighbor's house extends a little further. I've had for one fence permit application, in order to get it approved, I had an applicant have to submit 3 different fence permit applications from their next door neighbor, their fence permit application, and then their other neighbor, just to get different heights. So we felt that it would be more consistent if we just went with that building code definition that we already have in the fence code and kind of reference it here. That way, instead of being based off where the structure ends, it would be based on the setbacks. So we just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Then down to section C on the bottom of that same page. Kind of like we did earlier with the intersection visibility triangle. Swimming pool fences, this is a Florida building code requirement. They have to be 4 feet tall around if there's a swimming pool. And that already exists elsewhere in our code. I'm just kind of bringing it into the fence code so that everything's kind of all in the same spot. Like I mentioned earlier, we want people to just have to look at the fence code when they're doing a fence and not have to go searching around for your other sections. Also, currently with rear yards on the water in most residential zones, the maximum height for a fence is 3 feet if it's a closed fence, and then 4 feet if it's open. So this kind of lays it out black and white for people. If you have a swimming pool on a lot on the water, then you're kind of required, you need a 4-foot fence, but you're also not allowed to have taller than a 3-foot fence unless it's open. So it kind of lays that out over here, saying, gives them the option. You can do a 3-foot solid fence with a 1-foot opening, which we already allow. This just kind of lays it out black and white for someone that's not too familiar with code can see that.
That's one of the biggest questions that a lot of people ask. They're confused about the back fence in the backyard if it's on the waterfront.
Correct.
Right. It's 3 feet, right?
Yeah.
But it can start at 6 feet, right?
So for this, I'll go back to the height to kind of explain that. But yeah, that is a big confusing point for a lot of people that I talk to on
Right.
the phone as well.
And some build, and then they realize that they're not in compliance, and then what happens? They have to tear it down.
Then yeah, exactly. So yeah, going back to the height, rear yards facing water, they would and this, we're not proposing to change the heights at all, just to clarify, we're just proposing to change where exactly the front rear yards kind of start.
Yeah.
But it's, fences up to 6 feet are allowed. Sorry, I keep hitting the button. Fences up to 6 feet are allowed on the side yards. And then once the side yard ends, if they're on the water, you'd have to drop either to 3 feet if it's a solid fence or 4 foot if it's an open fence. And that the drop would have to, sometimes you see like fences that gradually drop. It doesn't matter, it would have to start gradually dropping in the side yard. And by the time it hits the rear yard, it would have to be that either 3 foot or 4 foot if it's open.
Okay, what about, the 6-foot bushes or, the bushes that some extend all the way to the water, right? That's allowable.
It's allowed as up to natural height.
So,
That's an open sky, right?
so 8
I
foot,
think
then.
I think it's in open sky, and I believe that there's a reference in this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is referenced here too somewhere. That's not something that we propose to change here, but I can find it. Maybe we can propose to change that. I think it's
So legally, they can go up to 8 or 9 feet, right?
for shrubbery
Right
in
now.
rear yards right now. And and we're not currently proposing to change it, but right now, they're allowed to grow up to natural height in the rear yard for a shrubbery on the water.
Thank you.
I think one thing you may want to add in there under maybe a note that the address side of the home is the front yard.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah, 'cause
So-
I mean, people, they're always looking at the back on the water. Oh, we think that this is the front of our home. That's how they treat it. For the fire department, it's the address side of the property.
Yep, and that's how we currently enforce it. A lot of times with like new constructions, we'll get, people want to know, oh, where's my front setback and side setback? So we do always look at based on the address of the home.
Okay.
So, yep, I think that's in our like main definition section. So that we would be following that. So were you thinking about proposing changing the natural shrubbery height or just a thought?
It's open for discussion, I mean, what do you guys think?
I would be opposed to limiting the natural height of a shrubbery in a backyard.
So,
Isn't that what we're talking about?
yeah, right now, yeah.
No,
I mean, right now, we're talking about fences, not shrubbery.
right, but, well, he talked,
Well, that
sorry.
is a fence.
Yeah, it is technically
That is a
mentioned in the
fence,
fence
Well, it
code.
can be if you put a bunch of them together.
Well, that's what,
Right.
I can't remember what year that was. Commissioner Kerr, I think you're on planning commission when that, when that happened. I think that might have been, was it 2021 or
Yep.
so?
I was
That
told it
was-
was a lively discussion,
was-
but
Yes, so I'm sure that even with what Joe went over, the front yard, side yard, rear yard, when we bring this to planning commission, I'm sure that'll also be a lively discussion of, well, what do we do, what we've done in the past? Do we change it? Do we keep it the same? So just really getting your input on that as well as planning commission.
There was a lot of disagreement.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
and chain link fence is not allowed in the front yard.
Let
Right.
me see where it's allowed. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I believe it's not allowed in the front yard. Let me
Yeah,
double
that
check.
it's
Okay,
only
thank
in the
you.
rear, side and rear.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
on page 114, chain link and other wire fences are
Item
not
one.
permitted in the front yard.
And then just to go back to the shrubbery and natural height, I just want to show everyone what it currently says. And I'll pull it up in the agenda packet too. On page 112, which is the first page of the fence code in the definition section, there's a definition for hedge. And that's not being proposed to change. Specifically states that hedges can be installed in conjunction with or in lieu of fences, except those fences required by a Florida building code and must meet the same height restrictions as fences and walls except in the rear yard where a natural plant material of the hedge may be allowed to grow to natural height. So that's what it currently says.
I remember the discussion being where, what is your right as far as your view? Is it directly out, strictly directly out from your home? Or do you have a right to see over your neighbor's yard, which goes back to what we were talking about on the height of accessory structures? You know, it's, what is your right? And it was determined at that time, the board determined at that time, your right is only straight out.
The back. Mhm.
Yeah, so something to think about. And then the only other change here to the fence code that city staff is proposing is just adding a small non-conforming section. Right, a lot of our code sections, for example, the sign section, I believe has its own non-conforming section about if a fence isn't currently built up to code, what are the rules? Here, we're kind of just proposing to put in black and white that all fences, regardless of what's existing, would have to meet the current fence code, and there would be no conforming allowances.
Yeah. If you pulled a permit for a repair or replacement, it would have to meet current code.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes
basically,
sense.
Yeah. I think small repairs that don't require permits would be the only exception.
And that's under
Just like
$500.
maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Routine maintenance. Okay.
All right. Any other feedback?
Is there any public comment on the fence?
John, great job.
Not on the fence about it?
I like the details and the definitions a lot. And nothing, nothing that's changed or anything that's not changed concerns me. So as it is, it's acceptable to me at this point.
Got it. Thank you.
Great job. A lot of reading to do. All right, then. Next up is parking residential. I'm assuming that's our parking supervisor or the city manager? Uh-oh. Oh, okay.
So, yeah, for
We're up to
parking.
you, sir.
So Mayor and Commission, we had discussed when we introduced changes to the parking ordinance to bring back to you for review discussions, the ordinance that was adopted that clarified the issuing of a citation in our code, as well as examples of how we defined improper parking. And we, again, in the ordinance copy in your agenda packet, there were some discussions about putting some specific distances, for example, for parking. I think it's number 10, parking in a manner that obstructs access to public facilities, mailbox or trash bins. Parking at number 11, parking in a manner that obstructs visibility for other drivers, such as parking on a curve is prohibited. So that's kind of the comments made by at least one resident and suggestions about adding some distance to that. Be happy to.
This is
Yes,
just,
we
this is
can-
just putting it in specific terms, stuff. that-
Yes, so specifically identifying, for example, you may not park within 15 feet of of an intersection.
Right,
Or
right.
you may not park, right now, number 13, for example, parking within 15 feet, that's pretty specific. So we could add the same to number 10 and or 11 in terms of the distance from obstructing either the access to a mailbox or a trash bin or obstructing the visibility, such as approaching a curve or an intersection. These are applicable only in the residential areas, obviously, and primarily where we do allow well, on-street parking. It's not allowed everywhere, and there are a few streets that are signed no parking, due for a variety of reasons, being too narrow or too many driveways or really nowhere to park a vehicle. So you'd be happy to add the distance to a structure, to an object, or to an intersection of 10 or 15 feet.
Since Jamal's here, can I ask, it seems like you already do have some guidelines for distance from a hydrant, from a stop sign, an intersection. What's that footage you're going with now?
You wanna come up here to the mic, but pretty much I think they use just kind of the sight line, what's visual and what's not. But
Right.
go ahead, Jamal.
Yes, we measure from the distance of a stop sign, fire hydrant, mainly with the technology that's been given to us by the city. So we have, measuring through the measuring app,
Mhm.
and, we measure and attach to the ticket.
But what
if need be.
distance do you use?
What distance do you use?
30 feet from a stop sign, and 15 feet from
The intersection, right?
intersection or fire
Well,
hydrant,
I
no.
I mean, I think if we already have some, put that in.
Yeah, we'll
whatever
codify,
he's-
put it in our.
What he's
code.
already
We can do
using,
that.
yeah.
Mhm.
So there's no question.
We're
I mean,
fine with that.
15-foot makes sense to make it all uniform.
Mhm.
And then with your fire hydrant, 15-foot on either side, your normal length of a fire truck is 28 to 32 foot. So they got to get off the road to be able to tie into the plug.
Exactly.
So, I mean, what you're saying makes absolute sense.
Great.
Is there any other changes to it? No.
I think you've covered it
Yeah.
from A to Z pretty
Like
good
it.
Well,
here.
we're still, Jamal and his staff, they do a spectacular job, but we're still, I mean, trying to clarify as much as we can, add even more signage.
Yeah.
Just explain, and well, I'm sure we haven't heard everything, but pretty close to reasons why people either A, did not park, or why they parked where they parked, from somebody that parks perpendicular across 3 spaces to an individual the other day who was parked, I'd say from the images, it looked about 4 feet into the next space, but was appealing the violation that they paid to park. Well, we appreciate that you paid to park, but you did not park within the marked lines, which is,
And you didn't pay for 2 spots.
no, they did not. I don't think they paid for
Yeah,
2 spots, right? No, there was a vehicle parked in the other spot, so they were very close. I mean, the other vehicle was like all the way. Obviously, it would appear that the vehicle parked within the lines was forced to park all the way to the left to avoid hitting the vehicle when they pull into the spot, but which we see. I mean, it can be anywhere. I personally would not pull into a space to park, but as I've said before, I'll keep driving around until I find a spot.
Yeah,
We have a lot of
unfortunately.
folks that obviously are super excited to come out here, and we appreciate that, but they still need to park in a valid parking space.
Yeah, we average 2 to 3, sometimes 5 improperly parked vehicles occurring on weekends mainly. And then certainly during
busier
the
times.
week, yeah. But
While you're up here, I wanted to say thank you for letting me ride along with you that day.
Anytime.
It was very informative. And now I see, as going out with you, what a great job you're doing.
I
So,
appreciate
thank
that.
you.
Right, we will bring that back for a revision, a first reading and
I
second
think at one of our last meetings, there was going to be stickers put on as some of the signs as far as violations for being parking across the line, or did that ever happen?
we've increased stickers for RV parking, and with further design, we'll increase the stickers with.
Yeah, specifically,
Yeah,
if,
specifically.
stay in your space, or a
Right.
fine will be.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
I mean, even probably some yard signs. We had discussed months ago about even coming up with something along the lines of like a standard parking sign, very catchy, very colorful, that something like,
Right.
Mad Beach Grouper reminds you to, or something like that.
Yeah.
Reminding people that, to pay to park within the lines, and et cetera.
Alongside many projects.
Try to make it fun, yeah.
One comment, I forgot to mention this to you. I might as well just bring it up here. I was walking Madeira Way the other day and I got complaints from two of the shop owners that people are parking on Madeira Way, walking to the beach.
Yeah,
They're
the
taking their carts and off they go. And they would like just an extra eye there because, hey, they're in business to make business. And if there's no parking, the people are going elsewhere.
No, I 100% agree with you.
I don't know how you can enforce that, chalk
We
mark
do
the
chalk.
tires. I don't know
Chalk
what you
more.
guys do or gals do.
Yeah, so I would really like to implement, first and foremost, starting at Madeira Way and then reaching the entire city and coming back. It usually will take us about 90 minutes to
Yeah.
a little over an hour and a half.
I just wanted to bring that up to you.
Unfortunately, they either move or they're not there any longer.
Yeah.
But we will diligently continue trying to make it a priority. I know our beach lots are more than enough, and then with increasing staff, eventually we'll be able to patrol it heavily as much as we do our beach lots. So
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
forgot
it's
to mention.
definitely on my mind constantly.
Yeah, I've just forgot to mention it in a phone call to either you
Oh,
or
yeah.
to the city manager. It's like, let me,
I think we had, one of the businesses did send me an email regarding that and I replied that we would, and it was,
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, unfortunately, there are currently 10 or 11 businesses on Madeira Way.
yeah,
And there are currently 26 public parking spaces
Yeah.
on Madeira Way.
yeah.
So you do the math, it's 2 to 3 per business. I agree, there shouldn't be any beach goers parking there, and I don't think we have a sign that says
I
that.
have new
no
signs
I think
for
we
me.
do have signs that say no beach parking.
I have
Because
more
even the
professional
private lot
looking.
behind has signs that say no beach parking.
Right.
Just like Winn-Dixie does, and when I walk by and I see somebody parking going to the beach, I remind them, please don't park
Right.
here because you're gonna get towed.
That's it. You won't come back to a vehicle.
Right, so, and most of them appreciate that, and I just go right across the street, it's free to the city hall lot. We're not gonna charge you if there isn't any big event.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's just continuing to educate and remind folks about it.
And I've just received brand new signs for Madeira Way. So I'm gonna be putting them up as well. So they'll be more eye-catchy. And
Well,
we'll
thank you.
definitely start to make it a priority.
Thank you kindly. Is there any public comment on this about the parking? Please come up, sir.
There's been a lot of controversy about trying to get back the 4 spaces at, what do you call it? The
Stewart
Kenny
Park.
Stewart Park.
Hmm.
So I've been contemplating about how to solve this problem. And I think from now on, we should charge all the parking meters the first hour, go to $4.50, and then every hour after that, drop it back to $3.50. We are not even close to what Treasure Island or St. Pete Beach gets. We are leaving millions on the table. So you would know how much revenue or per day that extra dollar.
Robin, I think we are the lowest, aren't we?
I'm sorry?
Yes, we
Yeah,
are the
parking
We're the
wise.
lowest between Clearwater to St. Pete Beach. We are
Right,
the
so-
lowest.
So here it is. There's a kind of a balance there. So you lost the 4 spaces, but I'm trying to give you like an outcome of getting that money that we are losing,
An avenue stream
okay?
or revenue
And by
stream.
increasing $1 for 1 hour is not gonna break the bank of all these people that are coming here.
Yeah.
So that's just my suggestion.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you. You don't-
Yeah, and we've discussed that. I think I brought that up with each of you to bring that back to you.
Sooner than later,
for
it sounds
fiscal,
like.
maybe sooner, but
Yeah.
it was part of our budget for next year, but certainly we can bring it up at any time, but we are the least expensive, and now private lots are, I mean, obviously during the busier times of the year, like March, April, we're as high as almost $12 an hour. And I myself, paid $10 an hour a few weeks ago when I showed up late to a meeting and chose a private spot and paying with the app. And as I'm halfway to the meeting, it said it was $20. So for 2 hours, so I'm like, well, I'm stuck. I'll just pay the $20 to park there for the 2 hours. So
Oh, my God.
Yeah, John's Pass, they're $20.
Understand.
Saturday or Sunday.
Understand.
I mean,
yes,
You know, $1,
we will
you would know how
consider
much
it.
revenue that is, but it's gotta add up.
Oh,
It's gotta justify losing the 4 spots.
and increase our tax base so we can keep your taxes reasonable. It all makes sense. Any other questions for our parking expert?
Too kind.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank
Thanks,
you.
Jamal.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, next up then is Public Works Trash Collection Residential. Please.
So Mayor and Commission, we heard from Mr. Hendricks at the beginning of the meeting and his comments. And again, I've shared with all of you, and we've discussed this multiple times at multiple meetings of really the change in our processes. The last sanitation fee increase, which was last year, or the year before, 2 years ago.
It was last year
Yeah.
because of recycling.
Well, yeah, we increased due to the change in recycling because we issued an RFP and switched providers and went to the 64-gallon container from the 18-gallon. But the increase, I think that Mr. Hendricks referenced, was the first increase in numerous years.
7, I believe.
It had been 7 years since the city had increased its rate, so we were falling behind just the costs from personnel, operating equipment, et cetera. And as I've said several times up here, the processes in this city, similar to a few other cities, where on any given day that the trucks went out, whatever somebody put out would be collected. If somebody called and said, well, I can't take my trash out, we would go and pick up their trash from the side of the house. Hopefully they were not going into the backyards, but that may have been happening. Clearly our staff was doing whatever service you want to call it was something that, in looking at it, was always somewhat unsafe. You don't want to go into somebody's yard or backyard, for number one. Number two, the process was very labor intensive without having the automated processes that we have now. Fortunately, I think we were spared numerous injuries, but and the fact that the trash sat out on the curb. And as I've said many times, regardless of income, age, level of education, and I've been in 4 cities, there are an awful lot of people who just don't tie a trash bag. So trash bags would sit out at the curb untied. Fortunately, being on a barrier island, we were not as susceptible to raccoons or other animals, or even just cats and dogs going through garbage bags. But I was in a city where that was a problem with groundhogs. That escaped me for a moment, and you would see trash just littered because they could get through a bag very, very easily. So we instituted in January of 23 the 64-gallon brown containers, and we had a lot of people upset. I have only heard from a couple who are still upset, and the only reason they are upset is because it's not large enough. And we offer a 96-gallon container, but now you're paying $7 additional a month, or $14 on your bi-monthly utility bill. The issues of bad odors, trash being strewn throughout the street, all things considered, have pretty much gone away using the 64-gallon containers or toters. Same for recycling. We had mentioned also through this process over the last couple of years that eventually, due to the issues of staffing, that we would go to an automated process. Nearly every other city has gone to an automated process, one way or another, for similar reasons. So, and there are cities and private companies that have been using side loaders, I will tell you, for at least the last 25 years. Because I started my career and worked at one where, when I arrived, mostly side loaders. You had one driver and that was it. going from in a city where you could just put out everything and it would get picked up has obviously changed, and it's a significant cultural change. We understand that, but we have to do it. There's no way around it. It's going to get, we just don't have the staffing to do that. I guess we could do that, but that's one of the reasons to do it, along with what I've stated, just keeping the city overall cleaner. So we have also, and Megan can correct me, we have always had Wednesday yard waste and bulk collection. It's been for many, many, many years. However, that's, if you're used to just putting it out your other 2 days, I'm pretty sure we had a lot of residents that were not putting out yard waste or bulk items on Wednesday. They were putting them out either Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. And that's where we're now, for all intents and purposes, enforcing that, reminding everybody, place anything that fits in the can for your Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday collection, it will be emptied. Yard waste, bulk items, whatever that might be, is now only taking place on Wednesday. I mean, we can agree to disagree, but I don't see that as a reduction of service. It is just a process, a change as to how you put your trash out. I've lived in cities where super strict. If you put it out early, you may get a $50 fine. What do you do when you have a house and you trim your whole house and you have a pile of yard waste from 4 to 7? I'm sure there are videos of when I lived up the road of the neighbors laughing at me as to why am I trimming trees on your front yard and then taking them to the side or to the back where they were not visible. Well, I would do that now if I owned a house. I don't own where I live, I rent, but that's how I would do it. Am I encouraging others to do it? Yes, if you are able to. If you're not, it's understandable, but a lot of homeowners are able to do that. I understand lots are a little bit smaller on the island. That is understood, but that is part of the process. I currently have a neighbor. It appears they hire somebody to come and do it, but they're not a landscape company. They're not a yard company. So they come and do it on the weekend. As Mr. Hendricks said, people do it on the weekend. We work during the week. Totally understandable. But do you have to put it at the curb on Saturday afternoon when the collection is Wednesday? Again, not something we would, if your trash collection was Monday, that pile would be gone on Monday. We could go back to that process. I mean, that's kind of your direction how to do it, but we really have to stay with the schedule that is most efficient, barring any change. But Megan, and I'll let you
Yeah.
go on.
Can I jump in for just
Yeah,
a
no,
second?
go ahead.
Was Mr. Hendricks correct in saying there were 3 people on the side loader truck?
That's correct. The reason is I made a promise and our intention was never to make that side loader a single person. The intention is in the event that we are super low on staff, which we've had, is that route can be ran with 1 person. But we do have staff, therefore we are still learning the truck, we are learning the route, we are switching things around because prior to, and I think I've mentioned this a few times, both the residential and the commercial do both residential and commercial, if that makes sense. So any of the dumpsters that are back in our neighborhoods are picked up by that residential crew.
So the side loader can pick up stuff off the rear?
No, sir.
No.
So we are with the side loader, we are now changing that. So now the commercial crew is having to come back into the neighborhoods and kind of change their route a little bit. So therefore our commercial crew that would pick up, say here on the north side of town that was in their area, now our side loader is now coming over here. So we're still switching things around a little bit. We're trying to change up the schedule. We're still learning the truck. So yes, there are 1 driver and then 2 people on the sides of the truck. So with the comment of having 1 single palm frond on the ground, put it in your trash can, please, please. I think it's really unfair for the staff to, 1, just have to bend over for 1 single palm frond and then expect, I just, as Robin
It's just a
stated,
culture change.
we do, and this has always been a rule, but with the staff member that I had retire last year, no matter what we would do, no matter what the rules were, he would just pick up anything and everything that was out there because the residents would ask him, and he had done it for so long.
And
Totally
now-
understandable.
And they're now still expecting that now.
Right. So it is a culture shock, as Robin has stated, but everybody's asking me, when has this changed? It hasn't changed. It has always been that way. It has just, we don't have the ability to pick up a couch on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday because we don't have that truck out. It is now a side loader. But with the brush, I mean, it's just, unfortunately, you have to plan for Wednesday. We are not the only ones that do that.
think
Treasure Island and us,
Other cities do that.
we mirror almost the same pickups. So they do brush pickup on Wednesdays as well. They are a lot more strict than we are. They only do a very small area, and they do like one time a year of a like extra large bulky pickup. We will pick up a whole claw truck for you if you have it out at the curb. So I know that the service has changed a bit. But if it fits, and this is what my guys like to say, if it fits, it ships. So in the new truck, if somebody has a cardboard box that is next to the can and they can shove it in the can, they'll empty it. But we also need to remember to break down our cardboard and also utilize our recycling that we are paying for as well. So we are doing 2 times a week pickup. Most people that call me that are upset, I explain to them, listen, you have the option to go to a larger can. The recommendation initially was to do a larger can, as most people have excessive garbage around here. To be totally honest with you, I don't understand. And some people get a little frustrated because I have a lot of questions when they call. I'm like, well, how many people do you have in your household? Because I have 2 people and 2 dogs in my household, and we never fill up a 96-gallon container at our house. I mean, we could go, and we only have 1 time a week pickup. So I think everything is shipped and everything comes in cardboard, but that a lot of people are not utilizing the full
The
recycling.
recycling.
So we're trying to educate. Commissioner Kerr, I can see you.
But also our recycling has increased.
Oh, yes.
I'm looking at, since we switched to the 64 gallon, where per pickup, the first month we had it, so per the weekly pickup, Waste Pro was collecting just of 8.19 tons. This is in January of 23. By June of 23, I'm sorry, May of 23, 8.38 tons, August 8.71, November 9.25, December 10.42 tons of recyclable material. And now, then it was this year, January, February, March of 24, 10.26, 10.42, and March was 10.53 tons of recycled material. So it is growing. And keep in mind, if you put one recyclable item in your 64-gallon container, or you fill it all the way to the top, doesn't matter, it still costs the same for what we're paying Waste Pro to come and pick it up. And that's whether you put your cart at the curb or not. There's still a cost to the city. If you are able to, if there was no recycling, that would all be in the waste stream, all things considered. So, and again, we wouldn't have a recycle cost, but it's going into the waste stream. We know that a percentage, and it's more than 50% of recycled items are being in fact recycled, as to the best of our knowledge. Some of it eventually end up in a landfill or waste to energy. It may eventually. So, but since we decided to continue with recycling, it's a fixed cost year. There may be an increase second year, third year, et cetera, but it is a fixed cost. The more that comes out of the waste stream, then we pay less our tonnage fees do decrease or would be less. Again, all things equal, if the county increases the tipping fees, which they will every year, 6%, then obviously it's going to be, you may not be able to see that, but the amount will decrease. We can see a gigantic difference here at the park. We placed recycling containers, and the amount of trash decreased probably 60%. Most of what was ending up in the trash cans were plastic bottles and cans. I'll say this also, same with the beach on the sand. And I was explaining earlier, from probably the 1st of March or the last week of February, I have, on average, I've probably opened and closed each week. I think I said an average about 200 times to look in containers, mainly from the county park and all the ones at Archibald. There's what, 25 or
At least,
24
there's a lot.
and Archibald Park. So there's, constantly looking. More than half of what's in there are just cans and bottles. But how do we recycle on this, or do we, and how is a little bit of a challenge to do that. And that's a huge change. But that's kind of another issue. The residential collection, yes, we understand that. We've been reminding folks of what we're doing. But we'll take the direction that you would like us to go. We're simply trying to streamline, make this a little bit more efficient. Again, the odor and the loose trash is gone. I don't see much, and as much as I walk around even neighborhoods, just don't see what I saw in the first year that I was here. And that's just the trash bags and open, and you'd walk by and you could smell the trash, especially in the middle of the summer. You could just smell if you're walking down even Johns Pass Avenue and Lillian and those, you could smell from people that just didn't, and not everybody had a lid on their can. That's, if they had a can, not everybody had a can. A lot of them, I think most properties did, but not everyone. So when I moved into where I lived, the other units, the cans were always in the front. They were different size, different shapes. Actually, most of them were circular, but different sizes, no lids. And I know that the person that lived above me, they would simply go out in the balcony and drop the trash into the can. And they would get it 9 out of 10 times, but the trash sat there open. And, eventually I bought thicker, better trash bags because I know that if they pulled some of them, they would rip. But either way, and again, now our staff are not lifting, and, now it's the automated process, which is well worth it. Hard to quantify what I've been explaining. The return of investment between odor and loose trash, we just cannot put a dollar value to that. There's no way to do that.
No.
Also the liquid with the rainwater. So if you think the heavy, so we're also cutting down on the tonnage of that. And also the leaching out throughout the city. So
I call it spooge on the ground.
it's disgusting.
And it smells bad.
It sure does.
One question I had about the side loader, just so we can get this all out in the open. They're currently undergoing training. That's why there's 3 people on the truck.
I
Or we
have-
just have extra staff and
I have one guy that is just, he is retiring in December. So, Kevin is semi-new on the truck. So he's kind of being taught the way that it works. So
this is temporary.
it's
Yeah.
temporary until December, and then it will go to a 2-person crew. But with the way of working out the schedule and the weekends with commercial, because Kevin also works commercial on the weekends. So we're figuring out the staffing. We just received the side loader two weeks ago. So we have not increased the staffing. I think finally sanitation has been fully staffed for, I don't know, maybe 2 months if I'm lucky. And that could change tomorrow.
Yeah, I just don't want to have a bad example out there for the residents that we've spent gazillion dollars, whatever it costs to rent or lease the side loader, and we're equipping it with the same amount as we would to use a rear loader. So we have to be
understand.
careful about that perception, although it's not
It's
really
not always.
reality because there's training going on, and we need to let the public know that that is what's going on and this is temporary.
Well, and there's not always a 3rd person on
Yeah.
that truck. If somebody calls off for the commercial crew, which happens often,
Yeah,
then he goes over to commercial.
okay.
So it's definitely not always. And then on Wednesdays, the rear load truck is out, and there are 2 people on the back of the truck.
And I
So
think there's
For
been some
bulk.
confusion out there with people putting stuff out alongside the cans. They think the rear loader's coming in, they're gonna take everything, and the side loader shows up. It's like, ruh-roh.
when we deliver the trash cans, there was a sanitation reminder that was placed on every single trash can. And on that sanitation reminder, it stated all of the rules. Only, yeah, only use.
Unless they remove the sticker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course, I'm sure most of them did, but when they do call and we do explain it, you know, some people are a little irate about it, but, then we offer them the larger can, or they can have the option to have 264s. It's just unfortunate that it is an additional fee. It's not a free cost.
Could it be? Wouldn't that lessen the headaches? I mean, could we, how much is it more for the other can versus?
So for the 96 gallon container, it's an additional $7 a month. And also if you wanted to have a second container, it's $7 extra a month.
It's
No,
because
I'm sorry, it's
higher,
14.
it's higher cost to the city.
Yeah, it's more of a tipping fee.
So it's, you're gonna put more trash out. But to Mr. Hendrick's point, this was a Wednesday and the side loader was out.
It was not a Wednesday.
It was
It was a.
Monday or
Tu-
Tuesday.
Yeah, it was not a Wednesday.
It was a Tuesday.
It was
a
one of his.
Tuesday.
One of it,
regular
I think it was
collection
Tuesday.
days.
I misspoke. It was a Tuesday.
And he had brush
and-
out in the second can.
And it was only supposed to be running the side loader on Fridays.
Wednesdays, we run the side loader Monday,
Wednesdays.
Tuesday, Thursday, and
Friday.
Friday. The rear load truck is only going out in the neighborhoods for brush and bulk item pickup on Wednesdays.
That's not what was discussed
It is.
when we were renting it. We were only gonna run it on Friday.
I don't remember that
No,
part.
we were running it
Go
for the
back and
regular,
look at-
We
Residential.
have it on video, so we'll check.
we have it in the minutes.
Okay. Um, I understand, all right, let me back up. Bulk, let's call it bulk recycling or bulk, yard waste was really, as far as I'm concerned, on Wednesday. A palm frond, you pull it down off your tree, okay. Typically, or a piece of cardboard that won't fit in the can. It's always been, you put it next to your container and it was taken. Well, it's not gonna be taken anymore. That is a,
Well, on Wednesdays,
Yeah, on Wednesday, we can.
which
take
has
it.
always been the schedule, but I know that's not that was the schedule, but it was also occurring on other days. And that's the change.
and, right, it is a decrease in service. I'm sorry.
The landscaping, no matter what we say, has always been Wednesday.
Yeah,
But you.
that side
you put
loader,
out
you
a
can't,
couple. You can if
and-
you have, put it in the trash can. Fold it.
right, so
put it inside.
the staff that's following the side loader to pick up the trash that falls out or whatever, he can't even put it in the truck unless they lift the container twice.
Well, we lift the container every 5 feet or less. So if something falls out, which hasn't occurred yet, then we just follow to the next and put it in. That has not, that has
Just
not
be
been an
careful what you
issue.
wish for, because if we just go to the side loaders and everything's automated, there's not, the sanitation staff is gonna decrease and
That's not. what we're-
sooner or later, it's gonna be outsourced, so.
But then it's only gonna be side loader.
And it's, exactly, but if there's no additional value for having it in-house,
That's. not
then
what
why
we're-
have the additional cost? Because I remember when we had the discussion, the sanitation staff was concerned that we were gonna go and just have someone else do it and get rid of our sanitation department. But if everything gets automated, that's the way it's gonna go. And
Well,
not from this commission, but from future commission. They're gonna lose their job.
But you can't automate everything.
No, that's
You
not
c-
possible.
Well, it's kind of getting that way, and
It's not
that's not the
possible.
level of service that,
Because you
I-
still have the bulk and the yard waste that cannot be automated.
Yeah.
And you still need staff for that.
Correct.
We're not requesting, and I think we've said this multiple times, to go fully automated. That's not,
that's,
the issue is you have these garbage trucks and you need CDL drivers, right? Our pay is not fantastic for a CDL driver. You want to pay somebody $19 an hour to come in to be a CDL driver. They're gonna go down the street where they can start out making $24, $25 an hour, or they're gonna stay in the private sector where they make a lot more money. I have gone through P-TECH and have requested, but then you have people that just want to drive. Nobody wants to do labor intensive work anymore. So when Frank does retire, which it could be sooner. He's tired. He's exhausted, and he has expressed to me how happy he is with the new way that we're doing things because it's not so labor intensive for him. But then whenever it comes to that point, we get to a point of where are we going to find workers? And then the commercial is so incredibly taxing. Anybody wants to take a ride along, please come see how it works. Because for me, trying to explain it really doesn't justify it at all. But the commercial always takes precedence because that is 7 days a week. Residential, that's why we go to a side loader, because most of the time you have somebody that calls in. Somebody gets taken from residential and has to go on commercial, and we'll figure out residential. But commercial, you're pushing dumpsters, not just 2 feet, not just 5 feet, sometimes every 50, 75 feet that weigh 1,000 pounds.
Question. I guess up in Reddington, you see the dumpsters are staged out for pickup. They're cocked where the truck can back right in. Who is doing the staging of the dumpsters? Are the tenants required to do that?
They are. And that is they are contracted with Waste Pro. But they have the ability to stage. We do not. We do not have an area where that could occur. Now, I do have some areas that do pull their dumpsters out, but it's not that they're staged out in the right of way.
So that's a contracted service from Waste Pro that I'm.
But most places that I'm talking about on our commercial route, our guys go into the dumpster enclosure areas, pull out the dumpsters, empty the dumpsters,
On Golf
and then
Boulevard.
put the dumpsters back into the place.
Yes.
And some of those places are 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's a 7-day-a-week service. So commercial route takes presence, and that's where we need to make sure that we have full staff to ensure that we can provide that service, because that could never be a 2-person. Could never. We could never go to front loaders. We just are not set up that way.
So to pay to collect or the trash removal, a reduced level of service because not everything is being picked up every day, or 3 days of the week are your possibilities. They're being picked up now 1 day a week, which require, again, the change that we mentioned. In the end, all of your trash is being collected. The timeliness is not occurring where I could put out trash Monday, Wednesday and Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday. Now if I have a bigger container that I no longer have to maintain, has a lid. If it breaks, the city will bring me a new one or repair it. But now I just can't simply put, if I happen to get a package and it's a 4x6 box, then I have to wait for the specific day to put it out. I can see that as a level of service, but in the end, it's still being collected. And again, how you would like to direct us to do that, we can go back to the way it was, or and see how but I'm sure we will be back requesting the automated, because that's just where, and again, I believe we're one of the last cities that is managing the trash collection the way that we have been. I recall years ago, Bel Air was doing the same thing, but I think they switched to the side loader also. But however you would like us to proceed is fine by us. It's just that we've explained the reasons for it and the change, and it just doesn't appear to be a gigantic change. It's just, when do you put out your trash and your yard waste and your bulk items? That's the key. And I've lived in cities where stuff sits out at the curb for days and that was fine. And I've lived in other cities where that was not okay or fine. So I think that's really the decision that we need. If people can put it out whenever they were, and the expectation is it gets collected, then we can certainly go back to that.
I feel like this is an example of no good deed goes unpunished. Our public works went above and beyond for so long. People expected it to always be that way. But since I've been here, this is the schedule nothing's changed. 2 days a week trash, 1 day a week. Well, I guess when I moved here, recycling wasn't invented, but but bulk pickup on Wednesday.
Mhm.
So I feel like with all the explanations that we've had, seems to be the way, unfortunately, things are headed, that the increase in the cost was not to maintain the white glove service, but rather because we haven't raised costs in several years. So it was just to maintain what we had. The only thing, and this is a kind of a personal thing that I would ask, you mentioned that you, Mr. Gomez, that you've been in cities where the trash sits out there until the pickup day, or sometimes they get fined. I'd like to stay at the kind of city that doesn't get fined, because legitimately, people cut their grass on Fridays, on weekends, right? They do their yard work on weekends. And at least in my neighborhood, there's not much space between the houses to store anything. So I'm gonna bet that there's a lot of yard waste on Mondays.
No, not
Not that
typically, to
much.
be totally honest with you.
Shocking,
I-
just
it-
because I would think that's when it would go out. But and like I've done it, I'm just gonna confess, I do my yard work on the weekends. If I have a pile of trash, it's bagged and put out there, or just put out there when I'm done, either Saturday, Sunday, and then it gets picked up on Wednesday. So in closing, I feel like we shouldn't penalize Public Works for doing the great job they've done so far, and are just now working within their contract job descriptions.
I would like to mention, we keep talking about the fee increase. Sanitation was actually prior to increasing the fee. We were actually losing money.
Losing money every
We
year.
were losing
Yeah, the-
money every year.
The
that
general
was-
fund was supporting it.
Yes, because Pinellas
Now it's
County
not.
was increasing their rates, but we were staying at the same, bless
Right.
you. So it definitely was not it was due to lack of us doing our part and keeping up with our fee structure.
I have a couple questions real quick.
Sure.
Can we possibly move the foliage pickup on Mondays? Is that possible to change the schedule?
We could.
I mean,
I-
realistically, I agree with John Hendricks. There's a lot of people that do their, landscaping on the weekends when they have time. I mean, it would be a great idea if we can just move it from Wednesday to Monday,
So would we then change around the
change the trash
regular, we
collection.
would have to change the trash collection
Would we?
days?
Would we have to change that also? I mean,
Well, then Wednesday would be
think-
a null and void day for them. So could we just close residential trash on Wednesday? We could definitely I'm not sure how we
And
would
I
do
think
that.
they're spaced out Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. I mean, to the accumulation. That's always been, and that's a reason why cities went from twice a week. Some cities have gone from twice a week to once a week.
right.
Just because of the spacing in between.
But
And I
I
can tell you,
haven't-
in one city that I was in, likely half of the residents why am I paying the same as my neighbor who has 4 people? I have 1 person or 5 people.
Right.
Everybody had a 96-gallon container, but it did not need to be emptied twice a week. There were some people who would wheel it to the curb regardless. If there was nothing in it, they would still wheel it to the curb
Well, of course.
just
yes.
out of,
And-
They could.
just because that's what you were paying for.
But also, if you take a drive on North Bay Shore, any given, say, Monday or Tuesday,
Yard waste.
there's a lot of foliage I've seen personally. And I was just wondering, it's something that to question, can we just move it, So maybe that's something to talk about. I don't know.
We'll look into it.
What's the policy on, say, your staff, like accepting gratuity? I know we give our people, money for Christmas and stuff like that.
We're
But,
not supposed to accept tips.
okay, so 0 gratuity, right?
That is the policy, and I don't know where that's written at, but I think that's in our ethics.
Well, it's
Robin,
an
correct me.
ethics.
Yes.
I'm
yeah.
not supposed to accept anything from any, but
Well,
we.
But don't ask, don't
But
tell.
I think it's been
only-
happening.
the only reason why I'm asking is that, if here's $10, will you take my foliage, while you're here,
Well, that's
no big
different.
deal. So that the policy is
Definitely.
0.
They're not supposed to. I always tip my sanitation guys for the holidays. I
Yeah.
think that's just something that always occurs.
Right.
But I definitely, They do not come running to me telling me about that because they are not supposed to.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Would anybody like to go for a ride along? You would? Okay. She did. Yes. She went on two ride-alongs, actually. She went in the claw truck on a Wednesday, so she got to see, because, so I guess kind of better explained too on Wednesdays and just in case. We actually have 3 trucks on the road on Wednesdays. So we have the commercial truck who does all of the dumpsters. And then we have the residential rear load that goes through the neighborhood. And then we have the claw truck that picks up all of the large piles. So some people will call and say, the truck just passed by my house, they didn't get my stuff. And I'm like, well, what do you have? Was it the claw truck and your pile's too small? Because the rear load truck is coming right behind them. So just be patient. Sometimes I'll go out in the truck and I'm just like, we'll get it, I promise. The guys are right behind, they're just stopping more often than we are. So, and then she also went and saw the next day, the following day on Thursday, she watched the commercial guys and how tough that is. So yeah, just give us, yeah, just let us know.
Just to throw this out here, it sounds like the biggest issue with staffing is the commercial route to a point. Do you have, just, if we didn't have the commercial route within the city, could you utilize the current staffing in other capacities and keep them working during the week?
Are you saying if we were to contract out the commercial side of it, would I be able to use them in a different department? Is that the question?
Yes,
Not unless I created positions.
understand. And you're fully staffed currently.
I have one in the hiring process. I haven't gotten an update on that. It's
Okay.
one of my grounds
One
positions.
one vacancy.
One vacancy. Yes.
Okay. It just seems like the commercial route is the most labor intensive.
I have had, Alvin has been with us for, I would say, 9 years. Eric left and realized that the public sector worked him a lot more and promised him things that he did not receive, so he came back.
Oh my
He is my
God.
driver. And then I have Jordan, who is still in his probationary period, who is younger and likes to call off often. So we are addressing that. And then I have one that's out on paternity leave. So he is my kind of go around fixer, Broyhill, the Broyhill runs pretty much 7 days a week. And then we have the trash bin cleaner, so he cleans the trash bins. So sanitation, we can be really great one day, and then we are really strapped the next day. So this weekend, I'm pretty strapped because I have one on paternity, one out of town, and one driver who's been here for Steve, the sanitation supervisor.
And what do you do to maintain current levels of service if you don't have enough people? Can you pull?
We haven't had that issue yet,
Oh,
to be honest with
okay.
you. No, and yes, I can pull. I have goodness, I'm tired too. 2 CDL drivers in Public Works that I could pull if absolutely needed. And then my grounds or Public Works guys will run the Broyhill if needed.
You have a backup plan to the backup plan.
Always have to.
Okay.
Just so we've gone from staffing of 6 back in 2017, we currently have, looks like sanitation for the current year is 8.6
Oh, it is
FTEs.
8, yes.
So
0.6
8
is
or
my
9 bodies, only up from 7 since 2017. But that's for residential and commercial.
Correct.
So it's small group, but if we were to stop doing the commercial ourselves, you no longer, and you outsource it, I guess my concern would be quality.
Yeah, level of
as
service.
to how would it work? Because right now they do go in probably half of the,
Over half. I think there's only maybe 3 properties that pulled.
where
directly.
you're not just doing what Waste Pro is doing in the Reddingtons, which I think it looks absolutely terrible. And I'm surprised cars haven't hit it, but to me, the first time I saw that driving down Gulf Boulevard, the first thing that came to my mind is, holy cow, I'm driving in central Mexico. But, in the third world, but
Oh, absolutely.
I couldn't believe that the residents of those towns allow that to happen, but that's just
is-
my observation, and then observe what we do here at a significantly different level. Again, it's improving, we have made the improvements and enhancements. It is a much better collection in terms of not seeing it, not smelling it. And I hear residents tell me that pretty regularly, and the city overall just looks cleaner. I could be wrong, they could be wrong, but walking around and driving around, and we really are 2 miles that do shine bright in terms of keeping the trash where it needs to be. And from the cleanup the other night, the people who, and this is regular cleanups, whether it's the Pirates, the Trash Turtles, or for Earth Day, people are starting to get a little bit concerned that they're just not picking up trash, which is a good thing to have, but now we're gonna have them fill holes in the sand or something else. But I think that's attributable to the quality that we provide. And so I do understand that, yes, we're not picking everything up every day unless directed otherwise. We're still picking up all the trash every day. And it is a change in the processes. We understand that. Again, we can go back to that. Or
And
continue
maybe
as is.
people don't realize that they can stuff the palm fronds in the can.
I have told everyone that does call and they're like,
Yeah.
I have a palm frond. I'm like, well, please fold your
Palm
palm
frond
frond.
hotline.
Put it in the trash can.
Yeah.
Fold it and put it in the trash can. That's what we do at our house.
Mm.
If you have a pile, obviously, please just be patient. We will get it on Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
And Treasure Island, like I said, Treasure Island, same thing. They do brush pickup on Wednesdays as well. So.
Anything else?
Thank
Great,
you.
great job.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Right. Before we adjourn, is there anything else from the city attorney? City manager?
No, thank you.
Commissioners? All right, the time is 9:22. Let's adjourn and call it a night.